Our story begins in a forest, with several people holding torches in their hands, likely searching for someone. Someone, probably the MC, is saying to himself that he suffered in the mountain for half a month, but he finally got his hands on it. He was holding a strange scroll, full of odd letters, but it was truly what he wanted. The legendary secret technique left behind by the Sword Sage approximately 600 years ago. The secret records of the Sword Sage. The MC would love to keep it for himself, but it was useless to someone with a broken Dantian like him. Other martial artists would try to steal it from him if they knew he had it, so he had to hide it before anyone arrived. The MC swallows the scroll, protected by a bamboo casing, to hide it. He thinks he should have brought some water to help it go down easier, but manages to swallow the whole thing. Someone arrives behind him, saying so he was there, and this startles the MC. The man says that the MC was the spy of the blood cult and asks if he found the records of the Sword Sage. His name was Mo Yong-soo. The MC looks at him and says that he found them and hid them in a safe place. He would hand the scroll over to the man if he kept his promise. The old man accompanying Yong-soo says he heard the promise on the way there. The boy wanted the bloodworm removed from his chest, drawing his sword and confirming that was the promise. Yong-soo says there's no need to fulfill it, which leaves the boy completely confused. Even if the worm were removed from his chest, he would have nowhere to return. The MC's name was So Won-hui, from the Radiant Earth clan. He had been exiled from his clan after his Dantian was destroyed due to an episode of Ki Fury. 10 years ago, he was kidnapped by the blood cult and had a bloodworm implanted in his chest. And since then, he had been forced to become a puppet of the cult. So, even if he gained his freedom, where would he go? The boy feels confused and nervous. Did that man know everything about him? Then he asks if that was all he had to say. Placing the sword at the protagonist's neck, he orders the boy to hand over the Sword Sage's scrolls. If he handed them over, then Yong-soo might consider removing the bloodworm from the MC. The boy's reflection appears on the blade of the sword. He then starts to say that the secret records were hidden in a place only he could find. Yong-soo understood the MC's situation. He wasn't asking for special privileges or to be accepted into the orthodox faction. All he wanted was to leave the blood cult and live as a normal human being. And if the worm was removed, he could hand over the scrolls. The old man lets out a light laugh and says the MC was indeed clever. The sword pierces the MC's shoulder, leaving him completely bewildered. With a sinister smile, Yong-soo says it was too obvious how he would hide the scroll. It was probably inside his body. The MC realizes that the intent of the two was to end his life from the start of the mission. The man pulls the sword out and asks Won-hui not to hate them too much. As the protagonist falls backward, Yong-soo continues saying that, from the moment he became a spy, he was destined for this end. The protagonist falls to the ground, realizing he wouldn't survive the blow, and wonders how his life became so miserable. The man starts striking the MC repeatedly, clearly enjoying it, but he notices that he cuts the scroll in half. This confuses him. Something strange was happening. Blue flames were beginning to emanate from the protagonist's body. Won-hui feels it too, but it wasn't hot. Was it false fire? Did it even matter at that moment? If there was such a thing as a second life, he only hoped it wouldn't be as miserable as the one he was leaving behind. A strange sound of glass shattering begins to echo, and suddenly, the MC wakes up. Someone had splashed water on his face. He gets up and yells that the water was too cold while two teenagers laugh at him. He starts touching his body, finding it strange that there were no cuts or burn marks. But before he could dedicate more time to thinking about what had happened, someone catches his attention, calling him a pathetic mule. One of the boys says that they, the dual quick Daos of Hunan, won the drinking game again. They were the ghost twins of the blood cult. The MC wonders why they seemed so young and remembers they were close when they were younger, but he had just died, burned by that fire. The MC looks in the mirror and is deeply shocked, and the boys ask why he looks so startled. He says that it was him when he was younger, but one of the boys kicks him in the back and asks if he's still drunk, or something. The MC, on the ground, gets looked down upon by the boy, who tells him to snap out of it and get up. Won-hui complains of pain, but soon realizes he's feeling too much pain for someone who was merely dreaming. He quickly sits up, and grabbing the clothes of one of the twins, asks what day it is. The boy is scared and confused, asking what he's talking about, but the MC doesn't care and asks again what day it is. It's not a hard question, and the other responds that it's August 9th of the 11th year of the sexagenary cycle. The MC calms down, thinking that if it was really August 9th of year 11, he was exactly 10 years before the day of his complete defeat. One of the twins asks what year the MC thought they were in. Had he gotten stupid from all the drinking? The MC starts laughing and hugs one of the twins. He was so happy because he had managed to return to the past. Still hugging one of the boys, the MC says it's great to see him, and the boy desperately asks him to let go, saying the protagonist was too cold. Right after that, the MC realizes that if it was 10 years before then, two men are approaching a building. One man, dozing off, wakes up and tells someone to greet the guests. But before he can even finish his sentence, the man's head is separated from his body with a single sword strike. Another person is coming out of the building, yawning and saying he would greet the guests, but screams desperately upon seeing his friend headless. The protagonist is rummaging through his belongings, thinking he should have organized everything earlier. One of the twins asks if he's going to say he's out of money, but the MC shouts that if they don't want to die, they need to leave that place immediately. The blue twin finds the MC's attitude strange. He'd been acting like this all day. Was he asking the boy to teach him a lesson? The protagonist finds what he was looking for, the only keepsake his mother had left him, a sodam sword. He was filled with regret for losing that item in his previous life, but he was happy to have it now, even if escaping was the priority. But as soon as he lays his hands on the sword, a strange sound begins to hurt the MC's ears. It was a desperate scream. He wonders what it was, even thinking he might go deaf after hearing it. Then he hears cries of fear, people pleading to be saved, and the three boys are together. The blue twin asks if they heard that, and the red twin says yes. It seemed to be coming from outside the building, but the MC realizes it was too loud of a scream to have come from outside. Yet this was not the time to debate that. That scream meant everything had started. The twins look out the window of the building they're in and ask who those guys are. The MC steps between the two boys and asks them to move aside so he can see what's happening. Peeking through the window crack discreetly, the boy sees that the blood cultists are already in his village. August 9th of the 11th year, that was the day the MC was kidnapped by the cult. The blue twin asks if those men are bandits, but the MC says they're actually blood cultists. He turns around and says they don't have time. They need to escape as quickly as possible if they want to stay alive, but the twins are still confused. The MC says that if they don't believe those were blood cultists, they can stay, because he's going to escape from this mess. The blue twin asks the red twin if they should escape too, to which the other boy agrees it's the best option. The MC doesn't worry much about them because in his previous life they became great martial artists after being kidnapped by the cult. It would be fine as long as he could escape, but something was still missing. There was a third person with them on the day of the kidnapping. The boy's name was Asong. He was with them that day. He was the only one who stood by the MC in the Radiant Earth clan, so the MC runs off to find him. He couldn't abandon someone who was like a brother to him. Asong was sleeping like a baby. Then the MC arrived shouting his name, startling the boy to the point that his soul nearly jumps out before him. He yells, swearing he wasn't asleep. The boy sees it's his master and breathes a sigh of relief, but the MC doesn't waste time with explanations and orders him to get up immediately. They needed to flee as soon as possible. The boy doesn't understand what's happening and asks the protagonist, but he's already pulling Asong by the arm, saying he can't talk now. Even in a rush, he still explains they were being attacked by the blood cult, and they'd invade the building at any moment. The boy tries to argue, saying the blood cult had been wiped out, but the MC orders him to shut up and follow him. The boy asks if they shouldn't head toward the exit, but Wenhui says they can't go that way. The entire city was surrounded. If they left now, they'd be caught. Asong asks if they could hide in one of the building's closets, but Wenhui says that's too obvious. They weren't there to steal their money, they wanted to capture people like them. They'd search everywhere possible to find people to abduct. Whether it was closets or large vases, if they hid in those places, they'd be found easily. Asong asks if they're doomed to be captured and killed, but the MC tells him to stop talking nonsense as they keep running. They needed to hide in an unexpected place, where no one would think to look. A place they wouldn't go, even if they thought someone might be hiding there. Outside the house, they arrive at a location, and the MC says no one would expect someone to be hiding there. It was an outdoor toilet. Asong screams in desperation, asking who in their right mind would hide inside a pit toilet, and the MC says now isn't the time to argue. Pushing the boy inside, Wenhui says he'll let him hide in the house's only toilet, but the boy protests as much as he can. The boy falls into the pit, and the MC closes the door, reasoning that not even the cultists would have the nerve to look for someone there. He'd hide there himself, but he had no choice. He needed to find another place before the cult found him. Arriving at a stable, the MC feels relieved, knowing he could hide there. He wasn't destined for that cruel fate after all. The horse bolts out of the stable, and the protagonist hides inside the hay. It wasn't a bad place to hide. It'd be easier for them to chase the runaway horse than to check inside the hay. But if there were any martial artists among the abductors, they'd find him through key sense. So he grabs a weapon just in case. Someone yells, saying it's filthy. They say the MC's hands are too wet, and this yell leaves the boy extremely confused. The sword starts talking to the MC, telling him to dry his hands and asking if Wenhui was ignoring it just because it was a sword. The boy wonders if the sword is possessed by a ghost, and hearing his thoughts, it incredulously asks what he's talking about. It explains that there's no ghost possessing it. It's just the sword his mother gave him that he stuck in his bag. Immediately, the sword realizes the protagonist had responded to it, and is impressed that a human can hear a sword. Suddenly, a little girl with white hair and clothes appears right in front of the MC, like an albino Tinkerbell, asking if he can see her. Manhwa is shocked, not understanding what this was. Was he hallucinating? While he's still mulling over whether this was a figment of his imagination, all this idle chatter is irritating the little girl. She yells at him, saying she knows he can hear and see her. Swords can hear human thoughts when touched, and this scares the MC. She was real. A sound catches both of their attention. He tells the sword to be quiet, but it asks why, whether it's because of the man approaching. She then says he's the only one who can hear her, and he says he understands that, but he needs her to be quiet so he can think better. The man arrives at the location where the MC is hiding and looks around, trying to find someone. Something catches his attention, and he looks to the side. Kneeling down, he sees some footprints on the ground, leading toward the stable. The MC slowly draws his sword from its sheath. As the man approaches the hay where he's hidden, the girl then asks if he's going to stab the guy if he gets found. Putting aside whether he has enough strength for this or not, what she wants to know is if he has the guts to take this action. The boy's heart was beating fast and loud, and he remembers his past when Yongsu told him he was afraid. The man raises his hand to move the straw aside, and the MC's heart pounds even harder out of sheer nervousness. Memories of the end of his past life start flooding his mind as his heart beats faster and faster. The straw is moved, and the MC's pupils widen as his eyes open. With a single leap and thrusting his sword forward, the MC lands a perfect strike on the kidnapper's neck, knocking him to the ground. The man doesn't make a loud noise, only a quick groan, and is finally sent to the lobby of life. Answering the sword in his thoughts, the MC says he doesn't feel fear but rather excitement. She could witness everything while being with him because he would survive in this life no matter what. The little girl is very impressed and says he's really skilled. Did he retain his abilities from his past life? Probably yes. She thought he was just a drunken fool, but it seems she'll have to reevaluate her opinion of him after this move. The little girl, who was the MC's sword, asks where he learned that, but the MC tells her to shut up because she's stressing him out. If you pay attention, she's just like Paimon from Genshin Impact, constantly annoying you and never shutting up. For now, the MC decides to simply ignore her, and the girl hears this thought, getting irritated with him as well. The situation was now much worse than he had imagined. The blood cult warriors aren't known for moving in groups of 3 during missions. The companions of the one the MC had just defeated would likely arrive at the location soon. Even though he had managed to hide the body, it was only a matter of time before they found it. He had to escape quickly. For now, he would just finish hiding the body and leave. The girl calls his name, and he asks what she wants. He just wanted to be left alone, but she kept distracting him. She replies that she'd like to ignore him too, but there's a cultist right behind him, so she thought he might want to know that. The MC turns around, startled. The cultist asks if he was interrupting something, but tells him he can continue and not worry about him. He even says he's enjoying watching his work. Was he going to stop now? The MC wonders how long that guy had been there, but what mattered most was the belt he was wearing, a brown belt. That was a mid-ranked warrior. The MC prepares himself with his sword, but he knows he stands no chance against this cultist. He should have been quicker in fleeing. The sword asks if he wants her help in this fight, but the MC keeps telling her not to distract him. The man approaches, saying that the MC is overestimating himself. It didn't seem like he knew much about martial arts. Even if it was a surprise attack, it was already impressive that he had defeated a cultist. Did the boy have average quality skills? The cultist then decides to make an offer to the MC. If he surrendered right now, he would let him live. The MC decides to provoke him, replying that if he wanted to kill him, he wouldn't have said those things about average quality. Was the guy afraid of ending up like the other man, even while wanting to capture him? This seems to have offended the man, who asks what the MC just said. The AliExpress Paimon asks if he's gone crazy. What did he expect to achieve by provoking the cultist like that? But the MC achieved what he wanted. He wanted to appear overly confident in the man's eyes so he could be underestimated by him. The cultist starts laughing, saying the MC has quite the audacity. He was very clever and skilled in the art of deception too. It would be a waste to end his life here. He was sharper than the MC expected. Drawing his sword, the cultist says it seems the boy wants to avoid the fight at all costs, so he wanted to see if the MC's skill was as sharp as his tongue. The sword is almost at the protagonist's neck. He manages to dodge by ducking, even though he's a third-rate boy with a broken Dantian. The speed the man was using was still visible to his eyes. The sword speeds toward the cultist's neck, but he grabs the MC's arm, telling him he's far too slow. The MC's eyes might be sharp, but his hands were still sluggish. Still, his counterattack was sharp. He grabs the MC's wrist, forcing him to drop the sword, and says he will overlook the fact that the MC defeated a low-ranked warrior, so it would be best if the MC followed him. But the sword was already falling into his other hand. With a backward swing, Manhwa strikes the cultist's face with the sword and shouts that he won't do that. He thought he had managed to defeat the mid-ranked cultist, but he notices something. The man had dodged a slash and was furious about it, cursing the protagonist. His eye was cut vertically and turned red. Essentially, he looked like a Kakashi wannabe. The man's kick lands squarely on his stomach, sending him flying backward. He had been overly optimistic and underestimated the abductor. He really thought he could defeat him at such close range. Standing up, the MC realizes he has no choice but to face the cultist head-on. The sword tells him she can help. He has no chance against the man without her assistance, and the MC sarcastically asks what she could possibly do. She complains that he's stubborn and asks what he plans to do since he doesn't want her help. He says he'll attack the man from the side with the injured eye. The man, closing his injured eye, says he tried to be nice to him, but it seems he's really wishing for help. He draws his sword. He had planned to apply a light punishment to the MC and then send him to the cult, but now he's changed his mind. The MC would be sent to hell that night. The abductor charges at the MC with full force, and the boy realizes he's going to use a specific technique. Several slashes are aimed at Manhwa. This was the basic technique of the blood cult sword art, the bloodthirsty slashing blade. It was too fast to discern the attack pattern, and he was deliberately avoiding lethal cuts. He wanted to make the MC suffer as much as possible before sending him to the afterlife. The man yells, asking if the MC now realizes what he's done. He would keep messing with the protagonist until he couldn't take it anymore, and went to his grave. It was too late to regret anything. His life was already lost. The abductor prepares a strike with his sword to finish the boy off. Several strikes are aimed at the boy, and he realizes most of them are feints meant to deceive him. But he doesn't know what to do. Should he try to attack and hope for a lucky hit? The sword whispers in his ear that the next strike will come directly from his front, so the MC uses the blade to parry the attack. This confuses the man, and Manhwa is sent flying backward. He rolls and lands on his knees. He is impressed that he managed to block the attack. The sword then tells him that was well done. If she hadn't warned him about the direct strike, he would have been defeated right then and there. The MC asks if she can see his attacks, and she responds that she can. Anyone could have seen those attacks. The sword starts taunting him, asking what he plans to do and whether she should remain silent while he gets beaten up by the abductor. Embarrassed, he looks at her and apologizes for ignoring her. Then he asks if she can help him. Stretching, she says she can help him. Yes, she wouldn't let an exotic creature like him, who can hear her, be defeated so easily. The fake Paimon asks if he has a plan, assuming she can read the man's attacks. He replies that he's thinking of something, but it's hard at the moment. He had already been counterattacked once, so he won't enter the man's sword range a second time. He'll do his best to maintain distance from the abductor, and the sword says that if he can make the man lose his patience, an opportunity will appear. The man is still confused that the protagonist blocked his finishing blow. How did he manage to do that? Could he have analyzed and understood his techniques? No, it was probably just luck. An idiot like him couldn't do that. Charging once more, the man yells that this time he'll kill him for good. The sword says he should first block the cultist's attacks and make him waste time, and the MC agrees, asking her to tell him where the strikes are coming from. The man starts using the blood cult standard sword art against the MC again, but this time, the MC is receiving help from his sword, which tells him which strikes are real and which are feints. The cultist was incredulous at the boy's ability to block all his strikes. Blood was dripping from his injured eye, causing him to lose vision. The sword warns the boy that if he attacks the man's blind spot, it will make him more impatient. His counterattack won't be precise, but it will be fast. She advises him that the man will use a horizontal strike, so he should wait a moment before advancing on the opponent. The boy ducks under the cultist's strike, and the man shouts, cursing at the MC. By then, the MC is already at his side, and the Paimon-like sword tells him to attack now. The cultist was skeptical. It was impossible for a third-rate boy to dodge his counterattack and find an opening to strike. But he smiles and asks if the boy really thought he'd be surprised by this. With a sidekick, the cultist hits the MC's arm, who tries to block the attack, but he's thrown back once again. The boy's arm was broken. The man calls the MC stupid for injuring himself like that. He had been impressive, using his blind spot, but he was still third-rate. The cultist leaps and shouts at the boy to go to hell, while he's still on the ground trembling. Manhwa clenches his fist and says, "Now." He dodges the overhead strike. The cultist is surprised by the evasion, and with just one spin, his neck is slashed, spraying ketchup all over the area. The MC celebrates managing to deliver a direct strike to the assassin. The cultist falls to the ground, utterly defeated. The sword asks if the MC is okay and if he can get up, and he replies that he can. His performance was impressive. The man truly believed his arm was broken, but the MC admits it only worked because the man wasn't fully alert. The sword says his final strike was really cool, and he thanks her for her help, calling her a short sword. She gets annoyed at being called that, and the MC asks why she suddenly got upset. She responds that she was just a little surprised, but if he was truly grateful for her help, he should clean the blood off her blade properly. The MC asks if she's angry, but she says no, she just wants the sword to remain clean because it's a relic from his mother. Immediately, the girl screams at the MC to move his head, but it's already too late. A hand smashes into the MC's head. He's knocked out instantly with just one hit. It was the third cultist, the one on the mission with the other two who had been defeated by the boy. The man comments that the situation is very unsettling. He had only come because the other two hadn't returned, and now he finds this scene. They were defeated by a mere child. The MC is unconscious on the ground, bleeding heavily. What's impressive is that he knew there were always groups of 3 and still acted like he had defeated them all. Someone picks up an identification tag and reads the MC's name. It also states that he's from the Radiant Earth clan. He was a well-known playboy in the Hunan province, the Luoyang Mule, marginalized by his own family ever since his Dantian was destroyed during a key outburst. One of the men suggests it might be a good idea to turn him into a spy since he's the son of an orthodox clan. The other kidnapper responds no, there's no reason to raise a bastard who doesn't even have a Dantian. He wouldn't be able to endure even basic training, and his current condition was already pitiful. The boy was trembling, and had completely wet himself. Even being from a famous clan, he was too useless for them. It would be better to eliminate him right there, as he wasn't even fit for low-quality use. The boy, already trembling and crying, screams not to be killed. He says he'll do anything they want, even espionage. Clasping his hands together, he begs to be spared. In his thoughts, he laments that he fought to avoid this situation but ended up captured and kidnapped just like in his previous life. Perhaps it wasn't exactly like it had been in his past life. This time, he was tied with his arms behind his back. He asks the sword how long he's been unconscious. He calls for the sword again, and wonders why she isn't responding to him. Probably because she isn't in his hands. He can only communicate with the sword when he's holding her. A man remarks how amazing it is that a playboy without a Dantian could defeat 2 of their men using such an old and small sword. After all, he was a martial artist. The MC thinks that the opinion of that man about him was much better than the first time. The cult was quite pragmatic, so at this rate, he would probably be caught by them. But he couldn't let that happen, or it would be another wasted life. The MC starts to think more calmly about it. First of all, he still needed to survive before thinking about escaping their grasp. One of the assassins says he will eliminate the MC right there, but someone interrupts him, saying that he was still a low-quality product. If raised properly, he could still be useful as a spy. The captain agrees, but he points out that many others with destroyed Dantian could also be used as spies. Why pick someone defective? He orders them to eliminate the MC, and they obey the command. The MC was tied up and began thinking about what to do next. He would have no choice but to beg for his life, just as he did in his previous life. The MC then screams and pleads with them to spare him. The captain sneers at the boy. Before, he tried to assess him, and now he was begging for his life. It would be better to stop trying to escape and pay the price for defeating his men. One of the assassins was already raising his sword to end the MC's life. This was worse than what had happened in his previous life. Was there really no way out? He had to think of something, and fast, even if only to buy time. He couldn't die earlier than in his past life, especially after managing to return. Someone begins laughing maniacally, and this grabs the MC's attention. The captain comments that seeing him trying to find a way out of that situation was a spectacle. Why didn't he start begging again like a dog? The MC notices a sword with someone standing behind the captain, and recognizes it as the captain continues speaking, saying he might even decide to make the boy his pet dog. A white decorative piece on the sword's hilt. It had to be that person. The MC immediately bows, placing his head on the ground, and begins praising the bloody demon, and wishing for the blood cult's longevity. He continues shouting that he is unworthy of his presence, and calls the man the 4th blood star, which leaves everyone there very confused. The 4th star was there. The captain asks why he was making such a commotion. There was no way someone like the 4th blood star could be among them. But when he looks back and sees the red aura emanating from the man, he is startled. Kneeling immediately along with the other men, he offers his greetings to the 4th blood star. The MC thinks about the 11 executives leading the blood cult, the 4 venerables, and the 7 blood stars. He had never met any of them in his past life, but he had heard rumors that the blood stars sometimes disguise themselves as low-ranking warriors to inspect the squads. The man orders the MC to raise his head, and he obeys. He found it fascinating because he had never been caught during his inspections before. The man's name was Django. Django then asks the MC how he recognized him despite not being part of the blood cult. The MC replies that it was because of his sword, and the man looks puzzled. The sword's decoration and leather wrapping. He had heard it was made in memory of his former trusted steed, the white stallion. The man is impressed by this information and kneels to the protagonist's eye level, saying he has very sharp eyes, but he wanted to know one thing. How does someone not part of the cult know such information? The MC realizes that Django is suspecting him but understands it would be strange if he didn't. In his past life, he hid within the Orthodox faction of the cult for 7 years and had been in situations like that many times. He was extremely confident in lying, so he tells Django that cultist blood runs through his veins. The captain looks at the MC in disbelief, and the subordinates question if he was saying there were descendants of the blood cult within the Radiant Earth clan. Everyone was shocked by this, but Django shows no emotion regarding the information the MC had given him. The MC explains that his maternal grandfather participated in the war between the Orthodox and heretical factions as a low-ranking warrior of the Blood Wolf Squad. After being gravely injured in battle, he sought a place to rest with his only family, the MC's mother. And that's how his grandfather ended up living in the city of Luoyang. It was very difficult for him to get a house after escaping the war, but his internal wounds weren't healing. His mother had tried to cover his grandfather's medical expenses by working as a servant for the Radiant Earth clan. And that's how she met his father, and he was born. Django repeats the part where the MC's grandfather was a member of the Blood Wolf Squad and falls silent for a moment. But in the next moment, he says the story is interesting and that the MC should continue, though he places his hand on his sword. The MC is annoyed that it seemed insufficient, but he continues. When he was young, he underwent intense training under his grandfather's guidance. Whenever he complained about the training, his grandfather would threaten to bring the captain of the Blood Wolves, No Jomin, and his son, No Sungu, to teach him a lesson. He said the captain's son had completed the Blood Wolves training at the MC's age. The cultists were impressed by the amount of information the MC had about the cult, even the names of the squad's former leaders. The MC also said his grandfather used to warn him that the cult would one day come for them. Even 5 years ago, his grandfather's last words were nostalgic for the cult. Django says he understands the situation and remarks that it makes sense, as the MC managed to defeat 2 cultists even with a broken Dantian. He was about to continue speaking when the captain interrupted, shouting not to make him laugh. The captain told the Blood Star not to listen to the boy. He couldn't understand how the MC had so much information about the Blood Wolf Squad. But Django interrupts the captain's speech, asking who gave him permission to interrupt and casting a terrifying gaze at him. He continues, saying he didn't know being a captain granted him the courage to challenge one of the cult's Blood Stars. The man panics, immediately kneeling and begging for Django's forgiveness. And the MC realizes the Blood Star's power was terrifying enough to make a captain soil himself in fear with just a few words and a glare. Django apologizes to the MC, but he says there's still something he finds very strange. Killing the cultists was clearly an act of self-defense, but why hadn't he revealed his identity to Captain O and instead begged for his life? The MC stammers but, regaining his composure, says he was afraid of being punished for killing the cultists, even if he identified himself, and apologizes. That man was sharp. Even though the MC had mixed lies with truths, he wasn't easily deceived and pointed out inconsistencies in the story. The man then stands in front of the MC and starts laughing heartily. He says his joke might have been too harsh, but he could understand the MC's reasoning. If the boy's grandfather was a cultist, that made the 2 of them practically brothers. The MC feels relieved for having deceived the Blood Star. Django says they almost lost an important descendant of the cult that night, and would like to accept him as a cultist to continue his grandfather's legacy. The boy responds that he would be greatly honored to accept the invitation, and that his grandfather would have been very happy if he were still alive. The MC had managed to survive the situation, but in the end, he ended up volunteering to join the cult. The MC is untied and immediately bows before Django, who is already leaving, thanking him and wishing the cult long life. Django welcomes him. Wenhui thinks that if he had known he'd end up joining the cult after everything, he wouldn't have resisted being captured. Django stops some distance away, seeming to remember something. It was fate that brought them together so the MC could return to the cult, so he could grant the boy one wish. The boy is confused by this. A Blood Star wanting to grant a mere boy a wish? This felt much more like a test. He couldn't discern the man's intentions. He asks for something reasonable, for his sword to be returned, as it was a keepsake from his mother. Django thinks for a moment, and orders the captain to return the sword to him, but the captain protests, saying it was the weapon the boy used to defeat 2 of his men. Django tells the captain not to make him repeat himself, and extends his hand to receive the sword. Quickly, the man obeys and places the sword in the Blood Star's hand. He draws it from the scabbard and examines it. It was an old sword but an excellent short blade. However, he places his hand on the blade, and, snapping it in half, says it was necessary for the MC to pay the price for shedding the cultist's blood. He also says he hopes that next time the MC uses a sword, he'll be more careful, and throws the sword toward the MC with just his fingers. The MC looks at the blade humming through the air with just a flick of fingers. The key strength of that man was terrifying, a clear warning to him. He might still be suspecting the MC, but at least he was alive for now. One of the kidnappers approaches him and orders the boy to stand up, but he asks if he can pick up the sword first. He was happy to retrieve the sword and asked Sodam if she was okay, but she was screaming desperately because her hair had been cut and demanded to know how he planned to fix it. He responds that he will find a blacksmith. Still irritated, Sodam says that if she could, she would shave Django's head, and the MC says he would love to see that too. The sword calms down and asks if he really was from the blood cult because she didn't know that story about him. He replies that it wasn't a completely fabricated story, but it wasn't entirely true either, and says he can tell her the truth. She seems confused and asks what was so important for him to speak to her with such intensity. He asks if she would believe him if he said he came from 10 years in the future. I have to admit, Sodam's face when she heard this talk from the MC made me laugh a lot. She didn't believe the boy at all. Looking at the MC, Django tells the captain to send someone to investigate the maternal side of the boy's family, which puts the captain on alert. He asks if the Blood Star was suspecting something. Django confirms, saying it didn't matter anymore if the story was true or false. The way the boy watched all his movements, trying to decipher his intentions, was like the actions of a seasoned spy. Regardless of the case, he knows too much about the cult, so they should keep an eye on the MC, and the subordinates comply. The MC was inside a carriage, and Sodam says she will try to summarize everything she understood so far. Wunhui had lived as a spy for the blood cult for the past 10 years but was betrayed and murdered. When he woke up, he was there, in the past. Is that right? The MC says that after going back 10 years in the past, he gained the ability to speak with the sword. The girl then says that it's no wonder he doesn't seem as stupid as the Wunhui she knew. He really was from the blood cult. That offends the MC. Anyway, he was really unlucky to go through all that. He went back 10 years in time only to be kidnapped by the cult again. Things would have been much better if he had just abandoned Asong, but the MC disagrees. The only person who treated him like a real human being was Asong. In his past life, the boy was killed while trying to protect him. It was a debt he owed the boy, and now he had been able to repay it. All that was in the past. Now he needed to worry about how he was going to survive. Sodam asks the MC if he's going to be a fool again after being used for 10 years. The boy looks confused. Sodam says he has the most powerful weapon in the world, information. He should know that better than anyone because he was once a spy. He already knows the next bad events that will happen, which means he can avoid them, or even turn them to his advantage. The MC then realizes that Paimon was right. Why was he worried about surviving when he had 10 years of knowledge to use? This was really a good opportunity, as Sodam had mentioned. He should make good use of it, and she agrees. He couldn't live like this forever, but first, he should stop talking out loud. It looked like he was talking to himself, and the MC realizes she's right. He had several opportunities. He might even have the chance to learn martial arts again. Sodam asks how he's going to do that with a broken Dantian, and he says that's not entirely reliable information. And even if it is true, that's something for the future, so it's better to set it aside for now. Sodam says that's pathetic. Sodam then asks if he regains his ki, would he want her to teach him martial arts? The MC is skeptical of this proposal. She says it's a short sword technique that her previous owner used. She's probably the only one who still knows it. The MC scoffs at the idea of learning martial arts from a sword. That wasn't possible. Sodam asks if he's ever heard the saying that even a dog in a school can learn poetry in 3 years. She bets she knows more than he does. She asks him to listen as she recites the principles of martial arts, and the boy, nervous, says he will pay attention. Suddenly, his hand begins to glow blue. The protagonist is startled. What was that blue fire emanating from his hand? In the next instant, the MC finds himself in another dimension, the dimension of the universe, alone and naked. He starts screaming, asking where he is and what is happening, but a voice says the universe must open with the possession of the sword heart. That wasn't Sodam's voice. A light begins to emanate from a galaxy, leaving the MC even more confused. Then he wakes up back in the carriage where he was, his hands still wrapped in blue flames. The protagonist asks what had just happened. Sodam yells at him, asking if he was distracted while she was working hard explaining the technique to him. But he asks her if she could see something. She asks what he wants her to see, and he asks her to look closer at his hand. There were marks on his hand, resembling a large shell. But she's irritated and only looks at the back of his hand, asking if her explanation was that boring. Resolute but still angry, she decides to leave, telling him to talk to her only when they reach their destination. He asks her if she'll be okay, pointing out that this trip will take at least 15 days to complete. She replies that she's just tired. Wunhui lies down, staring at his hand, still emanating the blue flame, trying to understand what is happening. It looked like the same fire as before. Could this have something to do with the secret records of the sword sage? The marks and blue flames disappear from his hand, and he wonders what he must do to make them reappear. The carriage stops, and someone opens the door for them. A cultist yells at them to get out. How long do they plan on lying there? It's time to get out, and anyone who tries anything funny will be eliminated on the spot. The sun hits the MC's face, temporarily blinding him, as the cultists order everyone to move faster and gather at the front. Sodam, having just woken up, asks what is happening, and the MC replies that they're in the Valley of Six Bloods. This was one of the cult's bases and also an educational facility where kidnapped children were trained to become cult warriors. And the man on the podium was the commander of this place, the tyrannical blood commander Gu Sangwon. Someone calls out to the mule from Woyang City, and the MC looks back. Before he can ask who it is, the twins Jwabaek and Woohyun already say that even though he acts like he knows everything, he still got captured. Wunhui says he hadn't seen them anywhere, so he thought they had managed to escape, but the boy says it's good to see a familiar face. The blue twin nervously asks why he isn't tied up. The MC says it's a long story, but the blue twin insists he tell it. Before the protagonist can say anything, they're interrupted by a voice shouting at them to stop chatting. It seems to be Captain O, and he points to the podium behind him, saying he'll count to 5, and everyone must start running. The blue twin asks to be untied before they're told to run, but he sees the MC already moving forward. He asks if Wunhui is really going to run, and Wunhui says if they don't want to die, they should do everything he does. This confuses the two boys, but the protagonist is already running ahead of everyone else. One of the twins tries to ask for an explanation, but someone behind them is already drawing a sword while the boys reluctantly agree to start running. In the next instant, someone takes a blow to the back, spilling blood everywhere, scaring a nearby girl. The cultists are killing everyone who isn't running toward the podium. Once again, things are happening exactly as the MC predicted, and the twins are right behind him. The blue twin tells the red twin they should do everything the protagonist says, even if they don't understand, and the boy agrees. Everyone there kneels before two men, and one of them says he's never seen this happen before. A child already kneeling without even being instructed, and the other, who looks more like a woman, says it must be the child the captain mentioned earlier. There was information that he claimed to be a descendant of a cultist. Sodam comments that he really is a blood cultist, and he says he needs to avoid any suspicion that he's not a cultist descendant. Moreover, if he didn't do it soon, they would use him as an example for the others, and Sodam says that sounds quite exhausting. Gu Sangwon yells for everyone to stay alert. They should feel honored to have been chosen, as the will of the great bloody demon led them to the glorious blood cult. The children there grow desperate upon hearing the name of the cult, until one of them stands up and tells him to stop talking nonsense. How was kidnapping and killing people the same as choosing them? Sodam says the boy was right, but wonders if it was wise to say that. The MC says he's going to be used as an example because of that attitude. The girl asks what he means by being used as an example, and the MC says it's exactly what she's thinking. She might not have noticed because they were running at the time, but the weak could die at any moment inside the cult. The sword finds the cult incredibly ruthless, going through all that only to end up killing those they kidnapped. But that's how they enforce loyalty. The cultist, who had just severed the boy's head from his body, says they can keep talking if they want to end up like him, making everyone tremble in fear. Sodam asks how he survived in his past life after going through all that, and the MC says he survived by obeying like a dog. Gu Sangwon declares it's now time to begin the baptism ceremony. He needs to start with someone, so he calls the one standing at the front of the children and asks if he knows what's inside the box the other man is holding. The MC replies that they are blood worms, which excites the man. He knows how things work here. Then, he asks the boy to explain to the others what a blood worm is. They are parasites implanted in the cultist's chest so they never forget their loyalty. They need to consume the cult's antidote every 24 hours. Otherwise, the parasite will stir violently inside the host's chest. The blue twin is startled by how much information the MC has. How does he know all that? Gu Sangwon says he is absolutely correct, as expected from a loyal descendant of the cult. The blue twin asks if he has been a spy for the cult all this time, and Sodam says he's been caught, as he really was a spy in his past life. The MC asks her to stop joking because it will be hard to get out of this mess. The commander places his hand on the box and says he will make an offer. This is the chance for him to prove his heritage and loyalty to the cult by earning the honor of being the first to receive the worm before everyone else. There was no way to avoid swallowing that parasite, but he had no other choice. The MC had already decided he would survive, even if it meant eating the blood worm. He clasps his hands together and thanks the commander for the honor of being the first to receive the worm. On the other side of the arena, Captain O is watching this scene from a distance. It seems Commander Gu likes the boy, even though it hasn't been proven whether his story is true or not. In any case, the truth will soon reveal itself. The preparations are complete. Wunhui can eagerly await what's to come. After swallowing the worm, the boy praises the bloody demon and wishes long life to the cult, which greatly satisfies the commander. The man asks if everyone saw how it should be done. Now it's each of their turns to take a worm and do the same. Sodam is shocked and asks how he managed to live 10 years with that worm inside his chest, and he begins feeling something very strange. A massive pain makes the MC scream, and Sodam is frightened, asking what's happening to him. His chest feels extremely hot, as if it's burning from the inside out. His eye starts turning red, and he can't understand what's happening. The pain feels different, but the location is where the worm is. The worm shouldn't react without a reason. So why was this happening? He looks into the distance, and sees Captain O on the other side of the arena. Did he do something? The protagonist falls to the ground, and Commander Gu asks what the problem is. Someone approaches and asks the MC if the blood worm is agitating inside his chest. When he looks up, it's Captain O, who remarks that for someone claiming to be a descendant of the blood cult, it's strange to struggle so much with this ritual, and he laughs. Wenhui is still confused and can't understand what the captain did to the worm inside his body as he coughs up blood. The only explanation was that Captain O had done something to the worm to mess with him. That was completely unfair. The commander calls for the captain and asks if the cadet is okay, and the captain replies that yes, he is fine. He must have triggered the worm when he swallowed it, but the MC thinks he wouldn't make such a mistake, as it wasn't his first time doing this. O orders the boy to turn his back so he can put the worm to sleep with the key technique. The MC grows suspicious of this, but the captain asks if he really thinks he wants to harm him. Other cadets are waiting because of him, so he should just handle it himself. The boy is confused. Could it be that the captain didn't do anything? The pain was moving to his stomach, as if something was about to happen. Before the captain uses the technique, the boy shouts for him to wait, saying he's fine now and asking him to step back. But the captain scolds him, saying he could get hurt. He orders the boy to tense his stomach, but the boy still senses that this pain is different. He feels the need to stop the captain, and asks once more for him to step back. And then it happens. The MC farts in front of the captain. It was almost like that scene from Kiba vs Naruto in the classic series. The foul smell begins to reach the captain's nose, and the boy says he tried to warn him to step back. He was fine now. Sodam bursts into laughter because of the fart, and the boy asks her how long she plans to keep laughing at him. She replies that it gets funnier the more she thinks about it, and thanks him for the laugh, but the MC says he feels terrible about it. Still laughing, she asks if he feels terrible because of the fart, but he says it's because of the blood worm. The pain was completely gone, and so was the feeling of blockage. This refreshing sensation was like something amazing. The blue twin calls out to the MC, calling him a blood cult pawn, and asks where they're going now. But the boy replies that he doesn't know everything. Sodam asks if he forgot that the MC also had to swallow the worm to survive. The boy shouts at Wenhui, asking if he's really going to treat his childhood friends this way just to stand out in that place. The MC asks what he would gain by standing out in the blood cult. Their conversation is interrupted when someone shouts to get everyone's attention. Captain O announces that they will begin the rank evaluation tests, so they should stop drawing attention to themselves or stepping out of line. It's better to listen. In the MC's past life, it was another captain who led this test, so he's confused by O's return, pointing to the caves behind him. O explains that each cave contains a cult examiner inside, and they just need to have their talents evaluated by them. When the test is finished, they will receive a ranking, high, medium, or low, depending on their results. The blood cult is entirely focused on the abilities of its followers. The captain orders the children to look at him, and asks if they see the band he's wearing. It's blue and signifies that he is a high-ranking warrior within the cult. Warriors with high-ranking skills and recognized achievements will have the blood worm extracted from their bodies, so they should give it their all. The children are impressed by this, including the twins, who realize they just need to be recognized to have the worm removed from their bodies. The MC observes this scene and tells himself that they can't even see they're slowly becoming cultists. The captain pulls out a whistle and begins putting it in his mouth, and the MC notices this movement, realizing what's about to happen. The cultist blows the whistle, and the MC quickly ducks, covering his ears, while the blue twin notices and asks what's wrong. He asks the protagonist why he's covering his ears. The whistle was loud, sure, but there was no need to overreact like that. In the next instant, the twin panics, and everyone there begins screaming in pain. Sodam is alarmed and asks what's happening to everyone, and the MC explains. That whistle makes the blood worm go berserk inside the body when it's sounded. The boy places his hand on his chest, confused because even with the whistle, he didn't feel the worm reacting inside his body. Everyone else is still trying to recover from the worm's fury, and the captain explains that he told them about the warrior ranks as a custom, but how many of them will actually reach the top ranks? At most 2 or 3 of them, while the rest would have to continue living with the insect inside their bodies for the rest of their lives. The captain shouts at them, asking how long they plan to keep lying on the ground. It was time to get up. The boys kneel, awaiting orders, while the MC grows pensive, thinking that the worm might no longer be in his chest, though he wasn't sure. Sodam says that might have happened because he covered his ears, But even doing that doesn't completely stop the worm's fury, it only reduces it. If he still had his Dantian, he could check with his key. The blue twin then speaks up, saying he's made his decision. Now that they've swallowed the blood worm, there's no alternative for escape. No matter how skilled the MC was in martial arts, he was far superior to a bastard like him without a Dantian. He would reach a high warrior rank, remove the worm from his body, and take his revenge. The MC is confused by this whole speech from the blue twin. The captain was about to start calling names for the tests when someone raised their hand. He gives them the opportunity to speak, and it was the blue twin, who asks to be the first to take the test. The sword asks the MC if this entire scene was happening because he hadn't told the boy what to do, and the MC makes an awkward face. The captain grants the blue twin's request and calls him forward. He eagerly obeys and runs toward the caves. He looks back, telling the MC to watch and see that he doesn't need his help and will become far better than him. But before he could finish the sentence, a critical blow lands squarely on his face, knocking him down instantly. The captain asks if he's deaf, reminding him he had just said not to act out of line. He was only to move when ordered and behave. The boy lay unconscious on the ground, and the captain shouts that he should respond when a superior speaks to him. Everyone nods in agreement. The captain approaches the MC and declares that he will be the first to take the evaluation test. The MC asks if it's really him and thinks that he already suspected the captain would pull something like this. But this man was becoming a thorn in his side. The captain asks if there's a problem. Does the proud descendant of the cult not want to take the test? The boy replies that, on the contrary, he feels grateful and honored by the captain's consideration. Life wouldn't be easy for the MC, but he wouldn't give up. As the MC enters the cave, the captain orders everyone else to line up. They will go in order. The MC senses something different about this test. The captain who supervised the test in his previous life was named Heijian. Sodam asks what rank he achieved in his past life, considering his Dantian was broken, and he replies that it was obviously low. Low-ranking warriors are used as disposable pieces in various missions. This impresses Sodam. It sounds heavy. Someone approaches the MC inside the cave and asks if he's Wenhui from the city of Luoyang. The boy recognizes the voice and realizes this must have been what was prepared for him. Despite being younger than in his past life, it was certainly him. Sodam asks if he knows who it is, and the protagonist confirms that he does. He knows him very well. That was his direct superior in his past life, which amazes the girl. She asks which squad he was from, and he replies that it was the Blood Wolf squad. She asks if that man was the current captain of the squad he belonged to, and the MC confirms. That was the man he mentioned to Django. No Sunggu, captain of the Blood Wolves. The man asks why the boy isn't responding to his question, and he asks again if he's So Wenhui from the city of Luoyang. The boy admits that Captain O's move was clever, but it was a shame. He had already managed to fool even a blood star, so deceiving someone he knew from his past life was nothing difficult. The MC responds that yes, he is Wenhui, and says he has heard about him from his grandfather. The captain says that's a very obvious lie and begins drawing his sword. The MC is confused, and the captain remarks that the MC claimed his grandfather was a warrior from the Blood Wolf squad. There wasn't any man among the warriors in his squad who matched the description of his grandfather, so the captain demands to know who he really is. The boy panics and tries to step back, but the captain quickly grabs his neck. He tells the boy that he's courting death. Did he say his grandfather was a subordinate of his father? The captain adds that he had trained in the Blood Wolf squad since the beginning of his life and remembered every warrior under his father. Sodam is desperate, realizing the MC has been exposed, and begs him to summon her so she can help, but he refuses, not wanting to worsen the situation. The sword screams that an attack is coming from below. He manages to dodge it, and blocks a direct strike with his blade. The force is so overwhelming that the MC feels like his hips are about to break. He can't fathom how a human could be so fast. Unable to keep up with the conversation, he takes a kick to the stomach. This makes him realize his body won't withstand much more of this torture session. The kick sends the MC flying until he crashes into a rock. Blood spurts from his mouth, and Sodam screams for him to hold on. The captain's personality is as relentless as it was in his previous life. The sword asks if he's okay, and he struggles to stay on his feet. The boy says he's fine. That attack wasn't a technique. If it had been a direct hit, he'd already be in a coffin. Sodam frantically screams for him to pay attention. The captain is coming at him with full force. He suddenly feels dizzy. It's hard to focus. Sodam notices he hit his back hard against the rock. She tells him to move the moment she gives the signal. There's a horizontal slash aimed at his neck from the right. The strike is closing in, and Sodam shouts for him to block now. He raises his blade, but the impact still throws him far, even though he managed to defend himself. The boy crashes to the ground, his sword landing far away from him. He tries to get up but is still weak. He thanks the sword for warning him about the attack. It saved his life. Then he notices how far it landed from him. He looks behind him. and the captain is already stepping on his chest, pinning him to the ground. The captain demands the boy answer where he heard about him. The boy feels a flicker of relief at the question. It's an opportunity since the captain seems to want to interrogate him, so the boy asks if he wants to find his sister. Unfazed, the captain replies that the boy has done thorough research into his life, but he seems to have forgotten the fact that his only sister is no longer in the land of the living. He says this as he brings his blade closer to the MC's neck. The MC shouts that Miss No Sewa is still alive. She was kidnapped the day his father was assassinated. He continues, questioning the captain why the only body burned in the fire was his sister's. It was far too suspicious. That body was fake. The captain's younger sister is alive, and if he wants to know more about this, they can make a deal. The man, still standing, keeps pressing his foot on the boy's chest while the sword lies far away. To even know her name. It seems the boy isn't bluffing. The captain drives his sword into the ground beside the MC's face. He accepts the MC's word and says he'll let himself be deceived for now, wanting to hear his story. He'll decide whether to strike a deal after hearing everything the MC has to say. Then he asks where Sewa is right now. Wonhui replies that she's with the Moonflower Merchants Company. The man repeats the name of the group, and says that this group is owned by the First Blood Star. So the mastermind behind his father's assassination would be. The MC confirms that yes, it's exactly who he's thinking of, and that person did it to incite his rage and control the Blood Wolves. The First Star, Jangryong. It was all his plan. The captain says that doesn't make sense. The wound reported on his father was. Before he can finish his sentence, the boy asks if he saw the wound with his own eyes. The recovery and verification of his father's body were entrusted to the Moonflower Merchants Company and the Clear Moon Commander, weren't they? The man is silent for a moment, and the MC thinks he's wavering. It's the right time to drive the final nail in the coffin. His sister is at the Gumhee branch of the merchants, in Jujiang. There will be many eyes there, so he should send someone he truly trusts. The captain begins to ask who the MC is, but the MC replies that if the captain wants to know, he could understand that the captain was willing to make a deal with him. The man asks for the MC's help, as he needs his strength, but warns that if any part of his story turns out to be false, no matter how, he will directly go after the MC to cut his throat. The boy says he has already consumed the bloodworm, and asks if that would be a problem, promising to find the captain's sister, as he stands up. The captain says he still doesn't fully trust the boy, but if everything he said is true, he would treat him as his savior for the rest of his life. The MC remarks that the captain is magnanimous as the rumors suggest, and thanks him. He thinks that this is exactly why he followed him in his past life. Wonhui looks at his hand and sees he has received a mid-rank plaque. The captain explains that he has the necessary qualifications since he managed to block 2 of his attacks. It wasn't because of the deal. The man asks the MC if he heard about his personality from his grandfather, and the boy asks if he would believe him if that were the answer. He says he might fall for that lie as he sheathes his sword. The captain says he still doesn't know if the boy is smart or foolish, and points out that he never revealed his grandfather's name to him. After being pressured, the MC had started giving away too much information on his own. The MC realizes he was caught and admits he was deceived. He says he still doesn't know what the MC is thinking, but he will trust him just this once. Sodam feels relieved. They barely escaped. She thought something bad would happen after she was thrown aside, and the MC knows he was lucky. As they leave, the captain notices that the boy is peculiar, remaining calm even in that situation. It's as if he were 10 years older than he seems, and his previous movement, even if the captain credits the first 2 blocks to luck. When he blocked both attacks, his eyes were closed. It was a bit too slow to say the boy had sensed his ki. That was impossible, but it felt like someone was helping him. He realized he was overthinking. For some reason, he didn't dislike him. Could it be he already knew him without realizing it? Captain O yells at the others to move faster. They had to organize themselves based on the ranks of their plaques. He calls the mid-ranks to join him. The blue twin sees the MC approaching and is shocked. He starts saying it's impossible that Woyang's mule could have achieved mid-rank status. The boy shows him the plaque, laughing, and the twin shouts for him to stop laughing. The boys are following Captain O through the terrain, and the 2 talk along the way. The blue twin cannot understand, no matter how much he thinks about it. It simply doesn't make sense. How could the MC be in the same mid-rank as him, when he doesn't even have a Dantian? Did he receive special treatment for being from the blood cult? The boy declares that he will definitely beat the MC in the next test. Sodam remarks that he is very competitive, and Wonhui finds all of it very annoying. It wasn't just the blue twin who disliked the MC. The captain was also irritated by the situation. Although he managed to handle the situation with Captain Sungu, this seemed to irritate Captain No even more, as he kept glaring at him whenever he could. It was understandable that he was angry. Captain Sungu confirmed his background, even if he didn't believe it. Sodam laughs and says he swallowed that story by force, just like he swallowed the MC's worm, and the boy asks her to stop saying things like that. She then changes the subject and asks what he plans to do next. He replies that now it's time to look for an opportunity to fix his Dantian. She comments that he had mentioned this before and asks if it's easy to fix, and the MC replies that there is a way. Had she heard of the divine doctor? She asks what on earth that is. The boy explains that it's a doctor known for being able to cure any disease, as long as you can pay his price. From what he had heard, the doctor had managed to fix a damaged Dantian before. In 10 months, the divine doctor will be in the Six Bloods Valley. Sodam asks if he will pay the price to be healed, but she points out that he left all his money in the house where he was on the day of the kidnapping, so he doesn't have any money now. Does he intend to sell her to get the money for the consultation? She feels furious at the thought, and starts hitting him. The blue twin watches him, wondering what he's doing. Should he copy him? The MC says the doctor's price is to find an herb. She asks if that's all, and he says yes. In 10 months, he will ask for a specific herb, and since he is a regressor, he knows the location of the herb. The sword is impressed by how ahead of his time he is and praises him. Even so, he will have to find a way to climb the cult's ranks, despite being from an orthodox family. Humans were humans, after all. They reach a location, and the captain orders them to stop. Several bodies lay on the ground, already in their eternal sleep, and the captain, desperate, asks what had happened there. He looks ahead and sees a giant man, wearing tiger skin as clothes, holding a man by the neck with just one hand. Will this cause a lot of trouble for Captain O? The man calls the soldiers he had just defeated trash and is visibly disappointed by them, but Captain O shouts, asking who he was. He looks back, and smiles. New prey had arrived for him to destroy. The next instant, he was already in front of Captain O. His speed was astonishing, but the captain's reaction time was also remarkable. Immediately, he orders the cadets to stay behind him and prepares for combat. But before he could raise his sword, the man had already grabbed his wrist. He calls the captain a hindrance, and tells him to get out of the way, striking him with such force that Captain O instantly loses consciousness. The captain falls to the ground on top of a cadet, and his sword lands far from where he collapsed. The protagonist was shocked. Captain O was like a mosquito before that man. Not even a commander could defeat someone like Captain O with a single blow. It was insane. He had never seen anyone like that, not even in his previous life. He was overwhelmingly powerful, and the protagonist couldn't even begin to imagine who this man was. The blue twin yells at him that the man had ended the captain's life, but he simply shrugs and says he isn't dead, ordering him to step back. With a single movement of his palms, the stranger generates an incredibly strong wind, so powerful it pushes the boys backward. The air pressure had grown unbearably heavy, and the worst was yet to come. The sound wave caused by his palms nearly burst the boys' eardrums. Some even fainted from the sheer force of the blow, but to the man, it was nothing. They were far too weak for having fainted from just that. He was visibly disappointed in the cadets. Were they all trash? Sodam asked the protagonist if he was okay and if he could hear her. He felt like his ears were about to split in half, and he couldn't hear anything around him. The protagonist was beginning to feel nauseated, as though he might vomit at any moment, and his ears were bleeding. But suddenly that blue flame starts to emanate from within his chest again. The sensation was as if his chest was heating up, leaving the protagonist confused. Sodam asks if his chest was heating up because of the worm, but he says the feeling was different. He felt suddenly healed. The twin yells at the mysterious man, and Manhwa looks at the situation. He was standing before the giant, challenging him to take his life right there, declaring he would protect his brother's life with his own. This excites the man. The brothers were near the brink of death, and the fact that they had resisted the sonic blow impressed the protagonist. The man begins to laugh and says he will let this opportunity pass. The blue twin is confused, and then, with just one blow to the boy's head, he is knocked down and immediately loses consciousness. His brother looks at the scene, completely stunned. Sodam yells at the protagonist, asking if he can move, and he says yes, adding that he doesn't know what might happen if they stay, so it's better to run. Unfortunately, the protagonist was noticed by the gigantic man. He says there's still one left. Immediately, Sodam screams for him to run, and he obeys. But it was too late. The man was already behind him at an incredible speed. He raises his leg as high as Sanji when preparing for a kick, and there wasn't even time for the protagonist to feel pain before he lost consciousness. Someone in the distance begins to shout Captain O's name, the voice growing closer and closer until the shout finally wakes the captain. It was Commander Sangwoo, who asks if the captain was okay, explaining that he came because the captain was late for their meeting. Most of the cadets were severely injured, and the commander asks what happened there. The captain replies that someone extremely savage appeared, and Sangwoo asks if it was the work of an outsider. The captain confirms and says, embarrassed, that he was defeated with a single blow, then starts to describe the man to the commander. He was a very large man with disheveled, long hair, wearing a tiger's pelt instead of a shirt. This description catches Sangwoo's attention. He confirms if it was a giant wearing a tiger pelt as clothes, and the captain says yes, that was the description. The commander stands up, looking contemplative, and Captain O asks what's going on. Sangwoo says that apparently, the man who crushed the captain and captured the cadets was that man. The captain asks about that man. The commander asks the captain if he knows the malicious Heaven Elder, one of the four venerables. The captain is shocked by this information. Sangwoo explains that exactly, the captain wouldn't know because he's just a dispatcher, but the elder now resides near the Six Bloods Valley. That man is one of the most powerful in the blood cult, belonging to the four venerables, and has the strangest personality of them all. The abominable malicious Heaven. The man smiles as he rests his head on his fists, and says that this is very unexpected. Holding Sodam, he asks the MC if this is what he was looking for. He had heard that all cadets were as weak as sacks of garbage, yet for him to have a sword like that. The boy was very different, simply by not having a Dantian, and still managing to withstand his power, and wake up before the others. That boy would be very interesting. The scene shifts back to Commander Sangwoo, who is running alongside Captain O. The captain apologizes to the commander for being useless in the fight against the malicious Heaven, but Sangwoo says he wasn't someone the captain could handle. O asks what the chances are of the elder eliminating the boys he took. They were mid-rank cadets, not as easy to find as low ranks. He doesn't know about Wunhui, but the twins are very strong and show high rank potential. Sangwoo replies that he doesn't know either. The commander explains that the elder occasionally appears in the area, but taking cadets? That's unusual. They're nearing where the elder lives, so they must be extremely cautious in his presence. Even the other three venerables avoid facing him directly. He is a freak among freaks. Sangwoo kneels in front of the cave where the elder resides and shouts that he praises the blood demon, and wishes long life to the cult, introducing himself to the venerable. The commander orders the captain to kneel as well, as he hadn't realized he should do so immediately. O obeys without hesitation. A strange sound comes from the cave. The captain asks if they should go in and check, but Sangwoo tells him to wait there. Disturbing the elder could only worsen his temper. Something speeds towards Sangwoo, and he draws his sword to defend himself, the blow landing squarely in the center of the blade. A seed had been thrown from inside the cave. The elder emerges, saying that was quite decent for a commander. The commander begins flattering the elder, saying he couldn't compare to him, bowing and humbly greeting him again. The elder asks if they've come to the area because of the three brats, and Sangwoo confirms, saying they need to train them for the cult. Immediately, the elder asks if he's afraid he'll harm the boys, and Sangwoo quickly denies it. The elder laughs and says the talents of those three are quite useful. He then declares that while he's there, he plans to train them personally. He orders the commander to stop worrying and leave the area immediately. The commander is shocked. Would a venerable personally train the cadets? The elder hadn't taken any disciples until now, but Sangwoo nods and says he didn't know he had this intention and congratulates him for it. The elder clarifies that the commander shouldn't misunderstand, leaving Sangwoo confused. He's only doing this to alleviate his boredom while he's there. He's not the type to take disciples for himself. Sangwoo apologizes, and Captain O is extremely confused. He wouldn't take the boys as disciples? Even so, this opportunity to be taught by a supreme master was incredible, especially one of the four venerables of the blood cult. However, he couldn't let this happen to Wunhui. Captain O declares that he dares to speak to the venerable. He explains that among the cadets taken as disciples is one called Wunhui, who has a broken Dantian. Sangwoo asks what he is doing. He continues arguing against the MC, but before he can say anything else, something strikes the captain with tremendous force, sending him flying backward and falling into a precipice. The elder asks why they're still talking when he already said he'd take them. It would be better if they stopped talking and disappeared immediately. Sangwoo replies, "Understood," and says they will leave right away. The commander is slightly frustrated by this. It's a shame the twins were taken, but it would be great, and the MC could even be used as a spy. The elder remarks that those two talk too much, while the protagonist silently stares at him, and he thinks that the black and white ghost twins from his past life had been taught by that man. But why was he being taken along this time? The man was deep in thought, scratching his belly. He stands up with the MC's sword in one hand, saying he had gotten hungry while talking. He then orders the boy to look for food for the next 4 hours. The boy nods, a bit frustrated, wondering if he was taken along just for that. Using the broken sword to clean his teeth, the man warns him not to even think about escaping, because if he gets caught, he should be prepared for the consequences. The MC feels a chill down his spine, terrified by this warning, while the old man gives him a terrifying smile. Despite his fear, the MC wasn't intimidated. He still planned to escape at the first opportunity that presented itself. But to deceive the old man for now, he agrees to his warning and says he hasn't learned martial arts yet, so without a weapon, he couldn't hunt. The MC was about to use the excuse that the sword was an heirloom from his mother, but before he could finish speaking, the old man had already thrown the sword at his head. He tells him he can take it since he doesn't need a short, broken sword, and the protagonist groans in pain. The MC thanks him, but Sodam is horrified by everything the old man had done, finding him extremely disgusting. The old man approaches the twins and, stepping forcefully on their faces, shouts, asking how much longer they plan to keep sleeping. The MC sees this and thinks that if it continues, they'll pass on to the next life soon. Grabbing the two unconscious boys, he begins to leave the cave, but then remembers something and tells the MC he wants meat. His food has to be meat. With just one leap, he disappears from sight. The MC runs out of the cave, but the old man is already nowhere to be seen. He couldn't even tell which direction he had leapt in. The wind was strong outside, and the MC wonders why, but when he looks ahead, he sees he's standing in front of a cliff. He had to find food in 4 hours in that place. This was completely impossible. How would he manage to find food in a place like that? Sodam looks ahead and tells him to look to his side, and he asks what's there. The old man was jumping between mountain peaks, leaving them both astonished. She asks if he really thinks he'll be able to escape from that man, and this question makes him lose the motivation to run away. But this wasn't the time to think about such things. He needed to focus on his mission. He couldn't give up now. The boy begins descending the mountain carefully, but it was very steep. If getting down was already difficult, escaping would be unimaginable. He was still thinking about what he should do next when a rock loosens from where he was holding, and he starts to fall. A tree breaks his fall, and he realizes he almost fell to his death. This second life was much harder than the first. He had narrowly survived. Sodam starts joking about how quickly he managed to descend with that near fall, and he gets extremely annoyed with her. He asks how far down he's managed to get so far, and she asks if he really wants to know. At that point, he gives up and continues his descent. Nearly 4 hours had passed since he began the mission, but so far, he'd only wasted time trying to descend the mountain. The old man suddenly appears where he is, in the middle of the mountain, and says it seems he didn't take the warning seriously, asking if he was ready. The boy could no longer even feel his fingers, but he says he was actually hoping to see the old man, and the old man threateningly asks him what he just said. The scene shifts to the forest floor. A rabbit is distracted, while someone aims an arrow at it, hitting it squarely in the middle, causing it to squeal before being taken down. Sodam celebrates the MC's aim. It seems he had gotten very good at archery by this point. It had been 2 months of doing this, so he should have improved. The old man used to beat him just because it took him about 2 hours to descend the mountain, and Sodam says she thought he was going to die during those times. She also mentions that he used to get beaten for trying to escape too, but now that was in the past. The hunt seems to have gone well, and Sodam says they probably have enough for the day, but the MC still wants to hunt 1 or 2 more. At that moment, the elder appears with a leap, landing on the MC's back. The MC starts stammering, saying that the venerable had arrived earlier than expected. He was just about to climb the mountain. The elder asks the boy if he managed to get food because his stomach felt as thin as paper. The boy shows him 2 rabbits, saying they'll be cooked that evening, and hands them over to the elder. The elder takes them and asks if those are the only 2 rabbits, noting that there are 4 mouths to feed. It seems he'll have to reduce the number of mouths tonight. The boy is about to ask what he means by that, but the man's hand is already near his face, and so begins another old school educational session. The MC is tied upside down, and shows no surprise at being in this position anymore. He thinks he's getting tired of it because he doesn't even know what the elder is thinking. There must be a reason for him to keep doing this. For the past 2 months, he's been living like a slave, climbing up and down a mountain that could kill him with the slightest mistake. He's searched the entire forest for food during this time, and the elder hit him when he found food and hit him even more when he didn't. There was simply no pleasing the elder. After losing consciousness from the beatings, he'd wake up tied to a tree. Sodam asks the MC if he didn't make a scene the first time he was tied up, but the MC says he's gotten used to being beaten and tied up. Someone approaches where he's hanging and calls out to him. It's the blue twin, asking if he's still unable to bring back enough food. They were beaten too, because of him. Sodam comments that the blue twin's face is completely wrecked from the beatings, and the MC says he would have been beaten even if he weren't there. The elder is calling for the MC, so the twin came to fetch him. He's being summoned 2 hours earlier than usual. What could the elder want this time? The elder tells the boy to take off his shirt. The boy is confused and asks if it's the shirt he means, just to confirm, and the elder says yes. He doesn't understand what's happening, why this so suddenly, but he obeys and begins taking off his shirt. The elder examines the MC's body. He asks if it's already been 2 months. The protagonist's body is completely transformed, and the elder says he's almost ready. The boy wonders what he means by that, and Sodam remarks that his body has become impressive from all the climbing and hunting every day. The elder looks at the blue twin and says that starting tomorrow, he'll be responsible for getting food. The boy protests, saying it's the MC's job, but the elder kicks him in the face. sending him flying with the force of the blow and saying he should do what he's told. Why is he talking so much? The elder tells the red twin that he'll be leaving for a while, so the twin should cook properly. The boy immediately agrees. Sodam notices that the red twin's hairline is getting worse with each passing day, but the MC thinks he probably doesn't care about it. The elder places a hand on the MC's shoulder, and he looks to the side. Before he realizes what's happening, the elder is already dragging him off, and the boy yells, confused about what he's going to do. He shouts, asking if they can't just walk there. But the elder says he's great at talking nonsense. He throws the boy into a waterfall and shouts that he's making this effort because the boy can't even use light steps yet. The boy sinks quickly to the bottom of the lake where the waterfall crashes. He manages to resurface and shouts, asking why the elder keeps torturing him like this. The elder laughs and says they're going to meet the person who will become his master. He couldn't show up dirty, so he brought him for a bath. The boy calms down and asks, Master? Sodam makes a joke, saying the elder is much dirtier than the MC, and he agrees. The MC barely gets wet before the elder says he's clean enough. It's time to leave. Sodam is outraged by this. They enter a cave hidden behind the waterfall. The sword wonders what kind of person lives in such a secluded place, and the MC guesses it's probably someone very reclusive. Sodam says it might be a super handsome master who doesn't like seeing people, but the MC says that's impossible. However, for someone to accept the old man as a friend and even take him as a disciple, they were probably just as abnormal as the old man. The man stops and tells the MC that they've arrived, then casually greets the man in front of them. He looks back and asks the MC what he's doing. He needs to show respect to the man. From now on, he would become the boy's master. Wonhui kneels and pays his respects to the man, introducing himself as a mid-rank member of the blood cult. Sodam says she doesn't think they're in a position to earn the MC's respect at the moment, and the boy asks what the hell she's talking about. The boy looks ahead and sees that his master had been dead for a long time. All that was left was a skeleton holding a sword. Could it be a talking skeleton? Sodam asks, and the boy asks the old man if he's joking with him. The old man laughs and says he doesn't have time for such things. Doesn't he know? The changes that have happened to him in the past 2 months, the strength he gained from climbing and descending rocks, while chasing game, strengthening his legs and building endurance. He also gained a lot of resilience from getting beaten by the old man every day, along with significant mental toughness. Even being hung upside down from a tree was training to strengthen his core and balance. All of that was to give him the basic physique necessary to learn martial arts. The boy apologizes for what he's about to say but explains that he lost his Dantian during a ki outburst. But his master laughs and asks if he really thought he had been training him without knowing about the condition of his body. He then asks what the MC would do if he told him there's a way to manipulate internal energy even without a Dantian. The boy looks at his master, confused but intrigued at the same time. The master asks if he knows what Jinkishin is. It's the first thing you learn when you start studying martial arts. Jing is a metaphor for a fine, delicate grain of rice and, in martial arts, represents the Dantian. Cultivation training allows one to accumulate, refine, and purify energy in the Dantian. Of course, since the MC's Dantian is destroyed, he cannot use this essence. The MC confirms this but feels frustrated hearing what he already knew. The old man continues, saying that without Jing, there are still Qi and Shin, and he asks if the boy knows what Qi represents. The boy finds this odd but guesses its vitality. The master says his knowledge is very shallow. Qi does indeed represent vitality, but the thing nested in the center of his chest has a proper name, innate Qi. This is energy determined at birth, not accumulated, and it's twice as powerful as the energy gathered through effort. From that perspective, the MC is very lucky because the writings behind him are methods for controlling innate Qi. Sodam gets excited. Using this method, he could learn martial arts just like anyone else. The MC, however, looks disappointed, and Sodam notices. She asks why he isn't excited, and he explains that Qi is his life force. Innate Qi isn't something that can be replenished. The more it's used, the less lifespan the martial artist has left. Sodam immediately understands what he means. If he learns this technique and uses it constantly, he'll end up in a coffin sooner. The boy thinks the old man expects him to learn this technique and be happy about it, but he won't do that. Wonhui kneels and thanks the old man for teaching him such a supreme technique, but says he cannot comprehend it with his foolish mind. He claims he has no talent and lost his Dantian when he was very young. He adds that when he was in the Radiant Earth clan, he was always told he had the worst talent of all and asks the old man to reconsider. Sodam is shocked by the lie. The old man strokes his chin and begins to consider the MC's words, thinking he's managed to convince him. But then he smiles and says it seems the boy knows a few things, being from a martial family. He realizes the MC is trying to avoid using his vitality. The MC is shocked to have been caught in a lie. The elder quickly places his hand on the boy's neck. He says being kind isn't going to work, so he has to make the boy understand that he needs to do this properly. If he doesn't learn it the right way, he'll no longer be of any use to the cult, so the elder will give him one last chance. Will he have his neck broken here, or will he learn the technique and slowly go to his grave? Sodam panics and pleads for him to say he'll learn the key technique, but the MC refuses to do so. The boy shouts that if that's the case, the elder might as well kill him right there. Sodam is shocked. The elder asks if he's saying he doesn't value his life, adding that no one would blame him for getting rid of a useless boy like him. He'll never escape a third-rate life with a broken Dantian. What gives him the nerve to speak like that? The boy replies, asking if the elder hadn't said he would discard him. The MC says he has to take a gamble with his life here if he doesn't want to live the same life as before. The boy admits he's afraid, but if he has to live the way the elder described, he would spend his entire life as a third-rate fighter, being used until his last day. Since his body had consumed the bloodworm, he'd rather die here than live that kind of life. The elder asks, "Bloodworm?" He then begins laughing maniacally while still holding the MC by the neck. He releases the boy, who falls to the ground sitting, and says the boy was trying to deceive him even in a situation like that. He's no ordinary trash. The boy is confused. He wasn't trying to deceive him, so he asks what the elder means by that. The elder asks if the boy thought he wouldn't have checked his body's condition. He's known about it since the moment he took him. The elder warns him not to show such foolish courage again, and the boy realizes the elder already knew. He asks why he left him alone then. The elder responds that the bloodworm doesn't matter. He's interested in something else, and that's what's important. The MC realizes there's no way out. If the elder really wanted to kill him, he would have done something the moment he realized the bloodworm was no longer in his body. The elder definitely wants something from the MC, and even though he doesn't know what it is, it has to do with learning the technique. The elder says fine, he'll make the boy an offer that might interest him. If the boy does everything the elder says, he'll ignore the fact that the bloodworm is no longer in his body. It's not too difficult. Once he learns the technique, he'll only need to have a martial fight with the twins the elder is training. The MC is stunned, and Sodam comments that if the elder had said that from the beginning, they would have agreed anyway. The boy asks, "Agreed to that?" and questions why he would. Sodam replies that it would be fun. The MC then asks the elder why, but the elder only tells him not to ask useless questions, or he'll break his legs. The elder adds that the MC seems to understand now, and will act like he's following orders, even though his expression says otherwise. First, the MC must start by sensing an 8 key, and once he manages that, he should return to the elder's residence. The boy nods, and the elder leaves, warning him that if he's caught scheming, he won't just break the boy's legs. Sodam comments that it's just a hunch, but she thinks the elder likes the MC. The boy is horrified, saying he has no intention of getting close to that insane old man. Either way, they need to study the texts. He'll have to learn the technique and will only use it if necessary. But first, he needs to see if he can learn it. He wonders why someone would need a master if they could learn martial arts and cultivation just by reading texts. The elder is returning home, thinking that the MC is brave but not stupid. A shame. If the texts were complete, it would be a blessing for him. But of course, if that were the case, he would have found someone better. Despite using an 8 key, that technique is something any martial artist would covet. The boy yells that this is insane, and Sodam asks what's insane. He explains that if he manages to master those secret texts, he could stop the depletion of his innate ki. Sodam gets excited. That meant he wouldn't end up in a coffin sooner by using all his innate ki. Sodam is impressed by this, but he tells her to calm down, as he hasn't finished reading the whole thing yet. He begins to read the step-by-step technique, which starts by removing the Dantian, then retraining the center of innate energy, and finally, the last part wasn't written there. That was precisely the part where the method to preserve innate ki should have been. The boy yells at the skeleton, saying it should have written that part first. How could it have died of exhaustion before finishing the technique? Sodam looks confused, and let me take a moment to say she looked really cute with short hair. But the MC pauses and thinks about what the old man had said earlier. You'll either die with a broken neck here or learn this and die slowly. The MC realizes that the old man already knew the texts were incomplete. Now, what was he supposed to do with an incomplete technique like that? Someone calls the MC a brat, and asks why he's so sensitive. How could he have known that? The MC asks what Sodam just said, but she explains it wasn't her speaking, it was that guy. He was angry because the MC called him a skeleton. The MC then asks Sodam if she could talk to skeletons, but she yells at him, calling him an idiot. It wasn't the skeleton talking, it was the steel sword speaking, so the girl suggests the MC talk to the sword. The boy asks if Sodam was talking about the sword that was with the skeleton. Could it also talk to people? The girl calls Wenhui an idiot, saying it's not like she or the other sword could talk to people. What's special here is that he can hear the voices of all swords. At that moment, he realizes this is what the scroll from his past life was about. He hadn't understood it because he thought, Heart of the Sword, was just the name of a technique and not that he could literally hear their voices. He looks at his hand, and the blue points reappear. So this was the universe? What kind of power could he gain by unlocking the other points? Sodam interrupts his thoughts and tells him to ask the steel sword. The sword also finds it interesting that the MC can hear him. The MC grabs the sword, no pun intended I swear, and immediately, the sword guy starts moaning, groaning, and saying it's been so long since anyone touched him. Again, no pun intended, I swear. The boy pulls his hand back in shock, and Sodam tells the sword to stop making weird noises. The sword apologizes, and the MC touches it again, this time with just one finger. The sword guy gets very interested in the fact that the boy can hear his voice, so he decides to introduce himself. He's the Southern Celestial Sword, named by his master, and his name is Ho John Day. The boy is surprised to hear this name, and Sodam asks why. He explains that Ho John Day was a famous sword master who shook the entire Yunnan region with just a steel sword. If he hadn't disappeared suddenly, the 8 sword masters of the Central Plains might have become 9. He was so incredible at the time. The boy looks at the skeleton in front of him, and asks why someone like him climbed an unknown mountain and ended up like this. He asks the steel sword if this was the old man's doing. But the sword says it was someone else who did this to his master. Not even that old man could defeat his master even once. The boy is shocked to learn this. If not even one of the 4 venerables of the blood cult could defeat the celestial swordsman, who could possibly have defeated someone like him so miserably? The sword decides to change the subject, saying they can discuss it later. Wasn't there something more important the MC wanted to ask? The sword says it knows the MC's situation because it heard him talking. After learning that technique, he would have to face the twins of the malignant sky. The boy says he'll figure it out once he sees the technique, but the sword interrupts him, saying it already knows, and will teach the cultivation technique to the boy. Sodam asks the sword if it's really okay to accept this so easily, but the sword replies that it's related to the honor of his former celestial master. If the MC loses the fight due to not properly learning the technique, Master Ho Jongdi's honor would be tarnished. Additionally, the sword longs for a successor to his master's martial arts. That is his wish. The MC feels happy because the sword is such a nice guy and starts thanking him, saying he'll take care of the sword, but the sword says they can begin negotiating. The MC is a bit confused, but the sword continues, stating that he wants Wenhui to become his master. The honor of his former master is important, but losing his existence as a sword is something he wants to avoid even more. He begins explaining that he's been lonely for far too long and wants the boy to become his new master, to touch his hilt and clean him daily. In the next instant, Sodam is punching him in the face for disgracing all swords with such weird behavior. The MC watches the two arguing and wonders if he should abandon this technique of listening to swords altogether. Wenhui agrees to become the new master of the celestial sword. However, he warns that if the sword makes any perverted sounds or behaves strangely, he'll abandon the technique and leave. The sword agrees. It says it's time to start learning the cultivation technique. The part called Jing is the Dantian, located just below the navel. This is the lower Dantian, situated slightly beneath where innate ki resides. The innate ki needs to be sensed through the MC's heart. The sword's former master referred to the area at the center of the chest as the central Dantian. This is the first time the MC has heard of this type of Dantian. He starts theorizing that if there's a central and lower Dantian, there might be an upper one too. The sword explains that the area above the middle of the forehead is likely where the upper Dantian resides, calling this area the mental illumination. For now, the important thing is to sense the innate ki in the central Dantian. He shouldn't worry too much, he just needs to feel the vital force of his soul. The boy asks how to sense the soul's force, and the sword explains that it's difficult to feel normally, so he'll need to rely on his 5 senses. The soul's vital force becomes easier to notice in life or death situations, when his life is in danger, when he suddenly manages to do something he normally couldn't, or feels a burning warmth rising from his chest. That's the sensation of innate ki. The MC realizes that everything the elder put him through wasn't just to strengthen his body, it was to help him sense innate ki from an early stage. Sodam disagrees, pointing out that the twins also endured beatings during training. One of them is even going bald. The boy nods, concluding that the elder is just crazy. The steel sword remarks that the MC seems to have felt innate ki before, and the boy confirms this. The sword urges the MC to return to that moment and try to recall the feeling, or his thoughts at the time, anything he can remember. He needs to relive the moment when his desire to live was at its strongest. The boy closes his eyes and thinks about the moments when he most wanted to survive, recalling several instances from his second life, the elder choking him in the cave, his attempt to escape before being captured, the bloodworm trying to explode inside his chest after he swallowed it, and when he begged to be spared. He also remembers facing the 2 cultists at the start of the story and, finally, being assassinated by his former boss in his past life. He starts feeling something burning inside his body and asks if that's the sensation of innate ki. That feeling is already familiar to him. Sodam comments that he's felt it before, like when he swallowed the worm and when his ears burst, and the MC agrees. The steel sword is impressed, noting that his previous master struggled for months before succeeding, and doing this in less than 4 hours is remarkable for the MC. It asks if the celestial master managed to do this, and Sodam suggests it's because the MC went back in time. The steel sword asks if that's a metaphor for a difficult life, but Sodam clarifies that he literally went back in time after being killed. The sword advises him to focus on the innate ki until he can sense something the size of a fingernail in his central Dantian, and the MC finds this strange. The steel sword says it's fine if he can't feel anything, but the MC says that's not the problem. He says he's feeling something about the size of 2 fingers, which confuses the sword. It didn't make sense for him to feel that much power on his first try, it was too strange. But the sword suggests he tests it by channeling that ki through his arm. The protagonist obeys, and the sword tells him to strike a stone pillar inside the cave. It warns that the pillar is quite sturdy. Sodam reassures him, saying it'll be fine. Even if he breaks his hand, he can use innate ki to heal. The boy retorts that they only say that because it's not their hand. Still, he doesn't care if he doesn't meet their expectations. Just being able to learn martial arts again was already a blessing. The MC plants his foot firmly on the ground to create a solid base, and decides to check his current strength, channeling a strike with innate ki. The blow chips a piece of the stone pillar, sending shards flying far away. Both swords are impressed by the MC's strength. It's the first time the steel sword has seen anything like this. Even though its previous masters had strong innate ki, it didn't compare to the MC's. With this level of ki, the time required for his cultivation training could be reduced by at least a decade. It was as if he had trained between life and death for an entire decade. Could it really be true that he's a reincarnate? The MC looks at his hand and wonders if this is a dream. His hand begins to glow blue. This was far beyond his expectations. Was this truly the power he possessed? Night falls, and we see the old man calling the MC an idiot. He's stepping on the boy's back, asking how he dared to try escaping from him. Wenhui says the old man is mistaken. He had been climbing up and down that cliff for the past 2 months. But without a body enhancement technique, how could he have made it back in time? The old man steps on the boy's head and says that wouldn't have been a problem if he had moved faster. The MC thinks he could have done so if he'd left earlier. The old man then asks if he managed to gain the ability to feel his innate ki. The MC doesn't respond, so the old man asks again, already showing irritation. The scene shifts to the old man's house. The boy has a swollen eye from being beaten because he claimed he couldn't feel his innate ki. The old man says it's impossible to feel innate ki in just 1 day, and Sodam asks why he doesn't just tell the truth. The boy explains that it's disadvantageous to reveal all his secrets so easily, and a little earlier, he had confirmed that, just as the steel sword had said, innate ki can't be sensed by others unless it's exerted. The old man says he almost fell for it. The boy seemed to be trying to trick him into exhausting his vitality, so now he'll show how seriously he's taking the situation. If the MC loses the battle against the twins, he'll be sent back to Captain O. For several days, the captain had been visiting him. The MC says he hasn't listened to everything the captain had to say, but it seemed the captain wanted to take him under his wing. The captain was persistent. He still wanted to mess with the protagonist. The old man continues, saying the twins told him the MC had become a target for the captain. If the captain finds out the worm is no longer in the MC's body, he'll never rise above the position of low-ranked warrior. The MC grows nervous and asks if this wasn't different from what they had agreed upon. The old man says the deal was valid until the MC started trying to trick him to avoid proper training. Laughing, the old man asks if this isn't enough to make him want to train seriously. The boy doesn't respond but reflects that he had already prepared himself for this. The boy then asks the old man what he would get if he managed to win the fight. Would there be any reward for him? The old man says he's got guts, but if he needs something like that to stay motivated, he does have something for him, only if he wins. Throwing some books in front of the MC, he tells him to study and familiarize himself with them while resting. He would learn those techniques from now on. One of them was the wheel arts of the Junryu Temple. The MC thought he wouldn't even be able to fight by only knowing cultivation techniques, but now he could. The old man said the skeleton's techniques were difficult for him to understand, but the wheel technique was balanced and could be used without difficulties. The twins were also taught in the arts of the wheel, so he shouldn't complain. This made things fairer for the MC. The other book was called The Art of the Stellar Sword. This sword art belonged to the skeleton, meaning the MC's master used those techniques. The MC was curious to see those techniques because they were used by the former sword master, Hojande. Sodam found it strange that the old man had the technique book of the southern master, and the MC agreed. Did he find it alongside the former master's body? The old man approached him and asked what was wrong with his face. Was he unhappy? The protagonist immediately exclaimed no. He was just a bit curious about one thing. Why did the old man have that manual? The old man was silent for a moment, but with a serious expression, he replied that it had been given to him. The steel sword said it was a lie. He already knew that the book had been stolen, and as expected, it had been the old man. He stole it to use against his master. With a strange smile, Sodam said this man really wanted to defeat the former master Jangdae. The sword then asked if Hei Action had said he would teach the MC the art of the stellar sword, and he confirmed that he did, every third day starting tomorrow. If he could demonstrate it to the MC, it meant he had mastered the technique, and it must have strengthened his martial arts using sword techniques. The twins were probably using the same techniques in the fight, and would have their martial arts improved as well. Sodam cursed the old man while the MC remained silent for a moment. He found it strange that the old man said he would try to make the battle fair and equal among the three, but it was obvious there would be a significant difference. Sodam was furious about this. It wasn't as if this would prove he was better than the former sword master, but he wasn't normal before, let alone now. The steel sword said that, in truth, this was because his former master had passed away. The two old men had been confronting each other for ages, but they were never able to declare a clear winner and loser in their fight. And now that Jangdae was no longer alive, there was no way to prove who was superior, so he was trying to win using another method. The MC found it strange because the sword said the old man had never been able to defeat the sword master, and he explained that all the fights ended in a draw. The MC put the book into his clothes and said that no matter what he does now, the result won't be established unless he loses. While they still had time, he wanted to find another way, and Sodam came up with an idea. To knock the steel sword out during the fight, and use Sodam in its place to defeat them, but the boy said it probably wouldn't count as a victory if he did that. The steel sword then said the MC didn't need to worry. The version of the sword art the old man stole was an old version, which Master Jangdae had not yet improved. After the manual had been stolen, he sought to enhance his sword art. The original technique was still full of flaws and weaknesses in its movements, appearing every few seconds, but while the sword's movements remained the same as the original version, the user's movements and flows had been improved, evolving the art. The MC had finished his training. He talked to the sword, saying he understood what it meant after using the improved movement. Despite resembling the original, there were still differences. The steel sword said that if the old man hadn't stolen the manual, Master Jangdae would never have refined his sword art. So in the end, it was a good thing. Sodam said she didn't want to ruin the mood but asked if the old man wouldn't be surprised to witness the improved version of the stellar sword art. Wouldn't he question why he didn't use the sword art as written in the books? The steel sword agreed it would be strange for him to appear with an improved version of the sword art when he had just learned it. Improving a sword art could only be done by someone with absurd innate talent with the weapon. This was quite a dilemma for the protagonist. If he didn't use the improved art, he would definitely lose. Knowing this, the MC decided he would use it, regardless of what the old man thought. Sodam asks what he was planning, but he only responds that there is always a way. The MC and the steel sword discuss something that makes Sodam curious, but he only explains that no one falls for a trick twice, and he plans to use that to his advantage. Elsewhere, far from where the MC was, Captain O was with another man by his side, determined to catch the boy. He was lucky to become a servant of the Venerable, but now he had brought someone to replace the MC. He had no escape. He tells the boy to show his skills as a warrior and eliminate the MC. The captain finds the MC and greets him, saying it had been a while since he had seen the boy. The MC introduces himself as a mid-ranked warrior and respectfully greets him. The captain says he has been working hard as a servant of action. The steel sword asks the MC if this was the Captain O the boy had mentioned a few days ago, and he confirms that he was trying to mess with him. The boy with the captain remained silent, and the MC was curious to know who he was. Could he be a recruit of the captain? He warns that the Venerable will take some time to arrive and that he could hand over the supplies to him, but the captain places his hand on his shoulder. He used his key on the protagonist's body. The captain says that it made sense. There was something special about the boy's body that made the Venerable want to take him as a disciple, but even he couldn't sense the innate key. The captain informs the MC that, from now on, the one with him would serve the Venerable. He was a high-ranking warrior and would be better for the old man. The captain also says he doesn't know how the MC convinced the leader of the Blood Wolves, but no one else seemed to have known the boy's grandfather in Luoyang. He says he needs to take the MC to the Valley of Six Bloods to conduct an investigation. The captain really wanted to catch him lying and mess with him. Wenhui says the captain was mistaken. His grandfather needed to hide his true identity as a cultist in his hometown. Moreover, the Venerable wouldn't be satisfied with just a mere high-ranked warrior serving him, and this confuses the captain for a moment. O calls the boy arrogant but finds it amusing. He would take this chance and turn the MC's arrogance into a lesson to impress the old man. The captain commands the boy named Do-hyun to teach the MC a lesson. He would take full responsibility for whatever happened. The boy obeys and begins walking toward the protagonist, and he realizes things have gotten too complicated to back down. Do-hyun says he has nothing against Wonhui, but he couldn't miss this opportunity and asks for patience because it would hurt a little. The boy notices that he is being completely underestimated by the warrior. Do-hyun throws a direct jab at the MC's face, but he dodges it effortlessly. Both the boy and the captain are shocked by how easily the MC evaded the attack. He thinks that technique was the basic fist technique of cultists, the Eight Bloods fist, and the boy executed it perfectly. But he was too slow, and despite having only reached 2 stars in the Stellar Blade technique, he didn't know that a high rank would seem so weak to him. In the next moment, the old man appears behind Do-hyun, shouting that he dares to try to kill his slaves. The boy looks back and, in desperation, pays his respects to the old man, but his hand was already holding his head. He smashes the boy's head in front of the MC and immediately grabs the captain's head, asking who he was. The captain introduces himself, saying he serves the tyrannical blood commander. The old man then asks if a mere captain was causing trouble in front of his house. He tries to explain that wasn't the case. The MC is impressed by the old man's strength, and Sodam says that even if he trains until he bleeds, she doesn't know if he'll ever be as strong as the crazy old man. He responds that he already knew that before she said it, but someone calls him the Mule of Luoyang. The blue twin approaches along with his brother, who is almost bald, and asks the MC how his training has been. He was in great shape. He looks to the side and notices Captain O's presence, but the protagonist is paying attention to something else. Their bodies had already improved a lot, even though it had only been a few days since they last saw each other. Their training must have been extremely brutal for them to be in such shape, and he wonders how much they suffered. The red twin looked like Tobias Funk. Cadet Do-hyun was lying on the ground as if he were a piece of trash, and the blue twin panicked, asking why there was a body lying there. Meanwhile, the captain was still shouting, asking the old man to listen to him. The boy's background was suspicious, and he was asking to take him in for investigation, but the old man didn't want to hear any more and punched the captain. The captain immediately passed out again. Letting go of the captain's head, the old man said he had already warned him that all this complaining was irritating, but he kept showing up to take the MC. The old man was impressed that the captain had truly made the MC his target, even bringing someone to replace him. The MC explained that on the day he was kidnapped, he managed to eliminate 2 of Captain O's subordinates. The old man was impressed at how useless they were to be defeated by someone without even a Dantian, but to him, the weak had to be eliminated. Annoyed, the old man told the twins to throw the 2 unconscious men off the cliff. The blue twin didn't understand. The old man shouted at him, asking if he should be the one to throw them, and the boys immediately obeyed, heading off to bury them in the forest. The old man began laughing and said the MC must be in a very complicated situation to be targeted by those dogs. They were the kind who bit their prey and never let go. That was their strength. But this was an opportunity that wouldn't come again for the MC anytime soon, and he asked if he agreed. The boy nodded. He left, inviting the blue twin to go with him to the forest. The twin said he didn't mind but asked if the MC had the ability to keep up with him. Wonhui replied that if he started losing strength along the way, he could carry him then. In a very quick movement, the blue twin was already running along the cliff wall, which left the MC completely shocked. As he descended, the twin laughed, calling the MC slow. Sodam said it was about time the MC learned some body enhancement technique, and he agreed. Sodam tried to talk to the steel sword about the body enhancement technique of his former master, and he said he would teach it, but he was rubbing against the MC. However, only Action's technique could allow him to descend the cliff like that. Not even his former master could do it. Frustrated at seeing the steel sword rubbing against the MC, Sodam kicked the poor thing to stop the weirdness, but the MC was watching the blue twin. He had become very strong, but he would keep up with him, so he descended the cliff the same way. Wonhui was still wondering if the twin understood what the old man had said. The blue twin reached the bottom of the cliff and threw the captain's body to the ground. He thought they were far enough down and wondered if he should finish him off completely. But the MC approached and asked what he was doing. The twin asked what he thought he was doing. He was assisting the boy at that moment. The boy was excited. He needed to vent some of his anger on something, and this was a great opportunity for that anyway. Breaking his leg could force him to retire. But the protagonist drew his sword, and the boy asked what he was trying to do. Wonhui said there must be some misunderstanding. Did he really think the old man only wanted the captain's leg broken? The twin asked if he was planning to eliminate the captain, and the MC asked if he felt sorry for him. The twin was still processing this information, and the protagonist told him to step aside so he could do what needed to be done. But the captain woke up and kicked the blue twin in the face. The blow sent him flying, slamming his back into a tree. The captain asked what the bastards had just said, and the MC looked back. The captain had awakened, The blue twin hadn't sealed his key points on the way to the forest. The captain was smiling grotesquely, saying the MC was there to exterminate him, so he would make the boy regret not doing it sooner. Still laughing, the captain asked what the MC planned to do with that sword he was holding. The Southern Celestial warned that the captain didn't know the MC was already capable of using martial arts, and the boy thought he needed to strike while the captain was off guard. The next moment, the captain was already in front of the MC, asking if he really thought a weakling like him could pierce him. The boy used only one hand to parry the captain's blow, and directed his arm to the side, leaving the captain astonished by this. He screams, asking how he could do that, and the MC was already preparing his sword slash, which strikes the captain vertically, cutting through his chest, and making him scream as ketchup sprays from his body. The captain is thrown backward and falls to the ground, and the MC is grateful that his strike worked. He managed to use his innate ki. The Southern Celestial praises him, saying it was great for his first time with a sword, but he couldn't let his guard down just yet. The opponent was first class. The real fight hadn't even begun. The boy says he used his ki to try sensing the captain's energy, and he saw nothing. So how was he getting back up? The MC leaps to strike with a sword from above, but the captain is just standing still. In the next moment, the captain uses the lazy donkey move to dodge the MC's strike and screams in fear. Another strike comes, and he sidesteps to evade. Sweating cold, the captain is terrified, and to think he'd have to use the lazy donkey move. He couldn't believe how powerful the boy was even without a Dantian. He needed to eliminate him quickly because he was too dangerous. His eyes turn red, and filled with rage, the captain says he won't let the MC live, no matter what. The blue twin finally wakes up, his face swollen from the kick he took earlier. He sits up and sees the scene of the two fighting and feels confused. When did the captain wake up, and how was Manhwa able to fight him? The captain lands a kick straight to the MC's stomach, sending him flying backward, but the MC manages to use his sword to avoid falling. The Southern Celestial asks the protagonist if he's okay, and the boy says he is, happy that he reduced the impact to avoid internal damage. Those were the abilities of a first-class warrior, a martial arts master. The captain was on another level compared to him. Even so, he wasn't at full strength because the MC had landed that first strike, so the boy still had a chance in the long run. The blue twin shouts at the MC to get out of the way, and leaps to perform a flying double-legged kick, saying the MC did a good job but that he would take over the fight from here. The captain easily counters the blue twin's move, and knocks him out again with a critical hit to his face, saying there was no need to rush. After finishing off the MC, he would deal with him too. But the twin still manages to land a kick on the captain's face. The captain screams in pain and curses the boy while the twin gets back up. The steel sword is impressed with the twin's ability to retaliate even while in pain. Adjusting his broken jaw, the twin says that compared to the old man, the captain's strikes were nothing but cotton balls and tells him to get ready. He charges at the captain, saying he'll make him pay for the humiliation he suffered during the evaluation test. The captain stands back up and uses the strike he received as an opportunity to spit ketchup onto the blue twin's face, calling him a persistent bastard. Charging up a punch with his fist, he says he'll send the blue twin to hell first. The MC is alarmed by this. It was impossible to block the captain's attack with his current skills. If that was the case, he could save the boy instead of blocking the captain's technique. He pulls the boy out of the captain's reach and thinks about taking advantage of the captain's position to take him down for good. The sword strike lands right in the middle of the captain's chest, and it pierces through the tree behind him. Even so, the captain wasn't fully defeated. The MC realizes it's not over yet. The captain is holding onto the sword with his hand, immobilizing the boy in that position, and decides to break the boy's arm. Manhwa tells Sodam that this is her chance, and she thanks him. With the short sword technique of the 8 lights, he could use both arms freely and uses the broken sword to deliver the fatal strike. The captain still manages to block the blade with his hand, even though it pierces through it, and says it's a shame. The captain's key strength is still immense, even in this state. It seems he played all his cards. The captain says his guts are twisting under the force of the MC's key, and the MC knows he can't defeat the captain with his current mystical art. Someone shouts for the MC to hold the short sword tightly, and the captain shouts for him to drop the sword. But in the next moment, the blue twin's 2 feet struck the captain. The sword went even deeper into the captain's hand, throwing him backward. Finally, it was over. The steel sword remarks that if not for the blue twin's kick, things could have gotten even more dangerous with a very different ending. The twin curses the captain and says he had the audacity to spit blood on his face, and the MC thinks that must have been the boy's first kill. The blue twin says that now the MC owes him his life, and the MC agrees, acknowledging that the captain was a first-class martial artist and very strong. The twin says they will face each other soon, but unfortunately, the MC won't be the one to win, and by winning, he could become the old man's apprentice. The MC wonders if that was the promise the old man made to the blue twin if he won the fight. He puts his arms on the MC's shoulder and says he knows the MC asked for something too, but it was pointless. The boy already spoke as if he had won. He was full of himself. He says that, indeed, if they fought, did the MC really believe he could even touch him? And he starts laughing at the possibility. The MC then asks if he wants to make a bet. Immediately, the boy stops laughing. Wenhui says the loser will become the winner's servant. He was confident and asks if the twin was as well. He gets excited and agrees to the bet, then turns to leave, but the MC says he should help clean up the mess that happened there. But the boy simply runs off, saying he'll see the protagonist another time. Even so, the MC was excited about the upcoming fight. He calls for the Southern Celestial, and he responds. He asks if Action's body enhancement technique was superior to that of his master Zhangde, and the Celestial confirms he had said so before. If that was a body enhancement technique, Action would have a higher level, and the MC says he understands, and asks if he should make that his wish. As he watches the blue twin climb the cliff at full speed, the blue twin enters the cave, informing Action that he did what the old man had ordered. Action says it's fine. Then he grabs the boy's head with one hand and asks why he returned alone. The boy replies that the MC couldn't keep up with him. He should arrive there in about 30 minutes. The MC was already outside the cave. The old man brings his face close to the twins and says that judging by his irregular breathing, he must have been internally injured and asks who took out the captain. The boy replies that it was him, and the old man gets excited by this news, then realizes that was indeed Action's order. The old man says their opponent was a first-class martial artist. If the blue twin was hurt that badly, then the MC must be in even worse shape. The old man looks ahead, and the protagonist is entering the cave, saying he got rid of the captain as ordered. The old man squeezes the blue twin's head and says his training from now on will be even longer. The boy despairs at this, and protests, saying the old man was mistaken. He was the one who delivered the final blow to the captain, while the MC had only injured him with his weapon. The old man orders him to shut up, and throws the boy against a nearby wall where the MC was standing. Sodam notices the boy is suffering a lot, but the MC thinks he would suffer less if he stopped making excuses. The old man looks at the MC and asks what he's staring at. If it's over, he could leave. The boy says yes, but he wants to talk about the wish he mentioned. The old man asks if he's talking about the wish he wanted granted if he won the fight, then says he'll listen to what the MC has to say. The MC says he doesn't want much. He simply admires the old man's ability to climb and descend the cliff with ease. There wasn't much he could do if the old man said no, but he wants to learn that. The old man asks if he's referring to his body enhancement technique. The MC promises he is. If he wins the fight, the old man will teach him the technique. The boy shouts in gratitude, though knowing the old man trusted he wouldn't lose. Action informs the MC that the fight will take place in 3 months. The captain may have died, but the MC still had much to lose by then. He suggested to the boy that he should train because his life depended on it. The boy nodded and said he would keep that in mind. He then told the MC he could return to his training spot. He still had to train those 2 useless ones, and the boy left. The boy obeyed the old man's order and already thought that the body enhancement technique would be his. The Southern Celestial asked the MC how he felt after using the stellar sword art in battle for the first time, and he said he managed to defeat the captain somehow. But thinking more about it, the first strike was delivered very easily, probably because the captain was already hurt by the old man's blow. The sword spirit said that, as he mentioned, while it wasn't directly part of the technique, it was still one of the 18 basic sword movements. The Southern Celestial's former master would have ended Captain O's life with the first strike. The MC felt a bit uncomfortable being compared to Master Zhangde again, and asked if he was really that strong. But Sodam interrupted the conversation and said that, in any case, he had won, and now he could focus on training to deal with those guys, and the boy agreed. The fight would be in 3 months, and judging by the fight between the captain and the blue twin, the latter wouldn't be an easy opponent for the MC. Then he asked the steel sword if they would train the basic sword movements again, and the Southern Celestial said yes, he needed to master them. They couldn't start training sword techniques without first becoming familiar with the basics. Sodam then caught the Southern Celestial's attention, and asked him not to be upset that the MC had asked to learn Action's body enhancement technique. The boy asked if he looked upset, and she then realized she was mistaken. She said Wenhui was the successor of the Southern Celestial's former swordsman, but was learning a technique from his rival. The boy said he could imagine how that could upset his former master, but, even though the MC was learning Zhangde's techniques, he wasn't a replacement for the master. It was normal for a martial artist to seek to improve their strength and learn more martial techniques. The old man was beating up the blue twin elsewhere in the forest. The boy went flying, and the old man called him an idiot. He had personally demonstrated the mystical stellar sword art to the twin. What the hell was he thinking? The boy asked if that was really necessary. His opponent was So Wenhui. He was about to say the MC was slower than the old man, but he was already being hit in the face with a stick, right on his nose. Action again called the blue twin an idiot and pathetic. Had he learned nothing from the fight? The MC was training alone with just 2 secret martial arts manuals, and yet he had no internal injuries after fighting Captain O. The boy was shocked to hear that, and said it was impossible. He had seen the MC get hit multiple times by the captain. The old man then pointed the stick at the blue twin's face and asked if he thought the old man couldn't tell if someone was injured, and the boy said no. He continued, saying the twin should know since he was present at the fight. Was he underestimating the MC to the point he couldn't gauge his abilities? He couldn't accomplish anything, not even when the old man gave him opportunities. This left the boy devastated and frustrated. Every day, he was compared to Wenhui. He had to win. He would make sure he won that fight. The blue twin stood up and asked the old man to show him the technique once more. The old man laughed and asked if he really wanted to see the technique again, even after being beaten up. The boy shouted that this wasn't training to him. He would show the old man that he and the MC were on completely different levels. He was about to continue with some speech when the old man lost patience and started beating him up again. The old man said that if he had the necessary determination, he should show it instead of spouting words without taking action, and the boy nodded. The old man said that now they had finished the training with the technique, now he could show the boy that. The boy was astonished. Was he finally being chosen to be his apprentice? He gets excited and shouts to his master that he will train until he can no longer endure. But the old man says he is not his master, throwing him against a rock. And with that, we get to see why the bald man was bald. He had been meditating upside down this whole time. Someone appears, thanking the old man and paying their respects to the cult. It was the bloody commander, Sangwon. The old man asks why he was there when he could have just left the supplies in his cave. The commander then says it wasn't about the supplies and asks if Captain O and a cadet had been there before. The old man responds that he doesn't know anything about those people and tells the commander to leave. Sangwon says the captain had informed him that he would be there today, and the old man calls the commander's name, asking if he was bothering him over a mere captain. After that, the commander never showed up again to inquire about the captain, nor did anyone else. Winter arrives in the valley, and the MC is at the foot of a waterfall meditating. There was no sound of the waterfall in the background because the water was frozen, and he was sitting on a rock with his eyes closed. An icicle breaks and begins to fall toward the protagonist's head. He still doesn't move, and the giant piece of ice is falling directly above him. He draws his sword from his back, and with a quick motion, he manages to split the large block of ice into 6 pieces. The fragments are flung to the sides, avoiding hitting the MC. The steel sword says he still has a long way to go, and Sodam says he's already good, but the MC asks them to stop arguing. The MC begins to walk, and says it's time to head to the location of the fight. The MC is walking and asks the Southern Celestial how strong he is. The spirit says he only has half the strength of his former master for now, but he had already improved a lot since he began his training, and the MC says it was thanks to his supervision. Sodam gets jealous and asks about her, and the boy says she helped a lot as well. She assumes it's under a posture and tells him to stop responding to her so indifferently, calling him trash. He looks at her, shocked at being insulted. This is a white-haired Tatsumaki moment. She yells, saying that even if he needs to use the stellar sword art in this fight, he must not forget her. In all the battles he's fought, the blade he's used the most had been her, and she had already sent 3 guys to the grave. The Southern Celestial says there won't be any deaths in this fight, and she says she already knows that. But the MC interrupts the conversation, saying they don't have time for this. After 3 months of training, he's only learned 3 techniques. Will that be enough? The Celestial says he doesn't need to worry. Better to master 3 techniques than to learn a little of everything. Mastering 3 would make him much more lethal. He's already strong enough, so he should be more confident in himself. The protagonist then thanks him for his words and says it's time to head to the fight. Action notices the MC's arrival and says he came early. He's laughing. Does he think the MC didn't learn anything and is going to lose? He compliments the boy for not running away from the fight and asks if he's ready to lose. Wenhui then asks if he shouldn't just wait and see. And behind him, we see Sodam choking the Southern Celestial. Just because. Sodam then stops assaulting the Southern Celestial and points forward, telling them to look. The 2 twins were behind the old man and looked very different. The red twin seemed to be cosplaying Saitama. Apparently, Song Jwabek, the blue twin, was much more muscular than before. The MC wonders what kind of training they had undergone to achieve such impressive results. Song Woohyun, the red twin, his head was much shinier than before. What kind of training did he do to become so bald? Meditating upside down leads to this. The old man tells the MC that he can see the twins have become much stronger, and the boy thinks that isn't all. Action then says the rules are simple. There is no surrender. The competition will go on until one side is completely unable to fight. There is also no such thing as sparing someone's life in the middle of the battle. The MC says he understands and asks who he will fight against. The blue twin steps forward and says it's against him, obviously. Wenhui is relieved he won't have to face a 2-on-1. The twin claps his hands together and prepares for battle. He appears to be using 2 iron gauntlets as his weapon. He asks what the MC is staring at. Did he think it would be fair for the MC to use a sword while he was unarmed? The boy agrees, and with a smile, he draws his sword to start the battle too. The boy starts provoking the blue twin, beckoning him with his fingers. Even the sword spirits notice the provocation. He was mocking action's arts. The blue twin easily falls for the provocation, making a furious face, and charging at the MC with everything he's got, shouting that he'll get him. Wenhui realizes the blue twin is a simple guy. If he's charging at him directly, he only needs to use the sword's range advantage. The moment he's within reach, the 2 boys rush toward each other, and the MC uses the first principle of the stellar sword art. Several strikes hit the blue twin, but he manages to use his gauntlet to defend against them. The fight is intense between the 2, but the old man simply observes, seated. He sees that the MC really trained during the last 3 months, and his techniques had indeed improved. However, he won't be able to defeat the blue twin using just that sword technique. Jwabek manages to grab the MC's wrist, and says he's got him. Using his other free arm, he starts delivering a series of quick punches. While the MC tries to defend himself, he asks how it feels and if it reminds him of the old days. He tries to strike the boy's temple, but the boy manages to dodge by ducking just as the blue twin's arm swings over him. Taking advantage of the opening, the MC knees him in the chin, and finishes the move with a somersault while the other boy is falling backward. He lands on his feet, and looks ahead. The MC almost couldn't escape the blue twin's range. It was time to reposition himself, but in the next instant, he takes a critical hit that sends him flying backward. The twin wasn't going to fall that easily. Wenhui slams his back against the wall, and the blue twin asks what kind of dishonest swordsman uses his feet to strike. The boy comments that the difference in his internal energy compared to 3 months ago is huge and asks if the twin has taken some sort of drug. The boy blatantly lies, saying he learned everything from the old man, but his pupils betray the lie. The MC thinks to himself that he almost forgot the purpose and history of this fight. In 10 years, the twins will become 2 of the strongest within the cult and will be known as the Black and White Phantom Twins. He might look like an idiot now, but he'll continue to receive emotional and material support. But what kind of emotional support comes from constant beatings? Either way, the MC remembers that in his first life, everything was against him, so he says to himself he's been thinking wrongly. The twin asks if he was wrong about something and if he is going to surrender, but Wenhui says he'll go all out now. Jwabek is confused by this, and in the next instant, both of his arms are severed, and the MC is already behind him as he falls to the ground. This puts the old man on alert. The boy is shocked by this, not understanding what just happened. He couldn't even see the MC move. The old man begins grinding his teeth quietly, but the MC notices. Even though he seems indifferent, his face looks stiffer. However, Wenhui isn't done yet. The fight is just beginning, and it's far too early to be surprised by the result. We then flash back to the blue twin. He's being smacked on the head, and the old man yells at him to do it again. He calls Jwabek an idiot and asks if he still doesn't understand. To fight with his fists, he needs to close the distance between him and his opponent. The boy says he understands, but the old man's attack was so fast that he couldn't even see it. The old man then shouts that if he can't see it, he'll hit him until he can. The boy is on the ground, covered in cuts, and thinks that after being beaten so many times with the stellar sword, that attack was definitely the Void Slash. But it was on the same level as Action's Void Slash. No one had taught him that, and yet he had gotten so strong. Wenhui yells at the blue twin and asks if he's given up, questioning why he's still lying down. The boy quickly gets up and says it's nothing more than a scratch, but he's irritated at the MC for mocking him. He had been trained directly by the great Action himself, and had experienced the mystical stellar sword art every day. He trained until his bones hurt, and he wouldn't let his guard down again. He would fight with all his might. The old man gets excited and tells the boy to come at him. Back in the present, the Southern Celestial says the blue twin seems to have learned the old man's techniques, and Sodam observes that he barely got hurt from the last attack. The Celestial then says that in this case, the boy will have no choice but to follow through with his plan. The two face each other again, the MC with his sword and the blue twin with his gauntlets. The fight is still intense, and they both separate to gain distance before attacking again. The MC starts maneuvering his sword, and the blue twin thinks that once he finishes gathering his spiritual energy, he'll roar, realizing that the MC is about to use the first technique of the stellar sword, the Tiger Fang sword strike. He manages to defend against the strike, even without seeing it completely. All he needed was to know where it would pass. Even though he was hit a few times, the injuries weren't severe. he could still move. The MC notices that even if he goes all out, the twin knows his movements and can deflect them. And he also had the enhancement technique. This made landing a hit much harder. He wonders if he should just overwhelm him with sheer force. The MC uses the first stellar sword technique again, but Jwabek immediately notices. This move uses pressure to subdue the opponent, but there was a gap between its movements that allowed him to get closer to the MC. At that moment, he would close the distance and deliver a critical strike. The MC switched his grip on the sword closer to the blade. That was the third stellar sword technique, the Void Slash. This attack used an unpredictable flow of strikes to confuse, so instead of deflecting them one by one, the twin decides to charge in and close the distance. The boy's strategy worked perfectly, but just as he was about to strike, the MC had already created some distance between them. To the twin, that was an obvious move. The MC managed to regain his balance using the horse stance, and, with his other hand, prepared to counterattack with the second stellar sword technique. However, if the sword user fails to predict the opponent's movements, this second technique becomes useless, and the twin targets the MC's legs. Wenhui loses his balance, and the twin takes advantage of the opening to land a punch. The MC is sent flying backward, and Jwabek is already celebrating, convinced that this strike sealed the end of the fight between him and Wenhui. He was confident. Nothing the MC tried was working against him because he knew all the stellar sword art techniques. The two spirits were cheering for Wenhui together, but he thinks that their cheering doesn't help much. The fight was tough. He had expected it to be, but it was still painful and exhausting. However, both the Celestial and Sodam tell him not to worry too much. His wounds could easily heal with innate key techniques. That was true, but he still complained about the pain. In any case, this fight showed that the stellar sword art had been defeated. He would be a complete fool to keep using a flawed technique. So even if he used the improved version now, he could claim that he made a few adjustments because of the disadvantageous situation. They wouldn't be able to deny that. The MC readies his sword. Quickly, Jwabek raises his guard to protect himself, calling the MC an idiot. The twin realizes that the MC is about to attack again, and he is confident that he can easily defend himself, but, as he notices, the Void Slash strikes were coming too fast for him to react. Jwabek starts screaming in pain from the MC's hits. The old man is surprised. The MC's movements had changed. Jwabek asks what Wenhui had done, and Wenhui responds that since he seemed to be able to defend against the stellar sword art, he modified it a bit, mockingly asking if the twin liked it. The twin is incredulous that he managed to modify the technique's movements in the middle of a fight, but he was seeing it with his own eyes, and the MC was attacking him ferociously. The Tiger Fang technique was now much harder to defend against, and he couldn't close the distance. He tries again anyway, and sees a small opening to strike the MC. He lands a critical blow that seems to hit right in the middle of Wenhui's chest. But when he looks more closely, the MC had caught his punch with just one hand. He had created distance while maintaining balance with his left hand and was now preparing to use the second stellar sword technique. The hidden mollusk strike. What a terrible name for this technique, don't you agree? The MC's hand starts trembling after using the second technique. It was bleeding, and he felt as if he had struck a giant iron stone. He looks at the blue twin and asks, what on earth was that form of his? His body was brown. He looked like the thing from the Fantastic Four. This fight wasn't over yet. The boy throws away his gauntlets and protective gear, leaving the MC confused. The Southern Celestial tells Wenhui that this was the strange blood body protection. The name confuses the MC, and I have to admit, I'm confused too. The Celestial says that from now on, the fight will be entirely different from what it was moments ago, so the MC should gain some distance. The twin calls Wenhui's name, and in the next instant, he's already in front of him, launching a punch right at his face and asking where he was looking. Wenhui manages to dodge the blue twin's strike, though now he's brown. I'll keep calling him the blue twin. His speed was now absurd. Even before, his speed had been very high due to the body enhancement technique, but now it was much greater. The first punch was a warning strike. If he had gone all out, the MC thinks he wouldn't have been able to dodge so easily. He hadn't expected the battle to be this difficult, but he would have to use his trump card at that moment. The blue twin seemed excited, his veins bulging and his muscles more rigid than ever, preparing to charge forward. Both advanced simultaneously, the MC with his sword and the blue twin with bare hands, using the first technique of the stellar sword art. The MC landed multiple strikes on the blue twin's body, but he shouted that it was useless at that moment. He delivered a critical hit to the MC's stomach, sending him flying backward and crashing into a rock behind him, shattering it. The MC took a deep breath. The pressure was immense. His opponent had gotten even stronger. Jwabek somersaulted over Wenhui, and came down with full force to land a powerful kick from above. The boy used his sword to block the attack, and the ground shattered from the impact. He managed to block the hit but barely created an opening to counterattack. Wenhui used the second technique again on Jwabek, and he was also sent flying back, but he managed to land on his feet and didn't seem to have taken even a scratch from the strike. Blood started dripping from his nose and mouth, and he said he didn't have much time left. In other words, the blood wasn't from the strike but from using the technique. The boy pressed his hands into the ground so hard that his fingers pierced the stone. He needed to counter the second technique of the stellar sword art, so he hurled several giant rocks at the MC, who began slicing through them with ease. Was this some sort of trick, or was the boy losing his patience? Jwabek was already behind the MC, and he once again used his sword to block the attack. The blue twin was as fast as Rock Lee in the fight against Gaara. Where's Linkin Park to do the OST? The MC looked at the blue twin and asked if he was okay. His body looked like it was about to explode. Jwabek began shouting, asking why the MC was worried about him. This wasn't the time for the young dog to be so relaxed. The Southern Celestial said things were getting far too dangerous. He needed to end this quickly, and the MC agreed. He couldn't hold out much longer, but the Celestial corrected him. It wasn't him she was worried about, but the blue twin. She had seen Action's body enhancement technique many times when he was still with her old master, but his skin had never swollen like Jwabek's, nor had pieces of his body deteriorated. This was a clear sign he was using a martial technique far beyond his capabilities. If he continued like this, he might not survive. The MC said he understood what she was saying, which surprised me. So it wasn't a boy, but another girl? Now I understand Sodam's jealousy. Jwabek in Action looked down curiously for a moment. Sodam shouted, calling the MC an idiot, and asked how he planned to fight with a sword at such a close range. But the Southern Celestial had already understood. He was going to resolve this battle using the power of their ki. The MC was intentionally matching his pressure to the blue twins, using his innate ki to try and release the blood protection from his body. Sodam becomes desperate and asks if he can use his innate ki so irresponsibly, and the Celestial says that for him, it would be like erasing himself. The two ki energies are evenly matched, and the pressure is so intense that the ground begins to crack and give way. Sodam says the MC is being overpowered by the blue twins' ki, but the Celestial tells her to look at their facial expressions. Even though it seems Jwabek is stronger than the MC, he is also tiring much faster. To the Southern Celestial, it's impressive. While the blue twins seemed intent on eliminating the MC throughout the fight, the MC wasn't just skilled in martial arts, he also had insight into others' hearts. With that, Wenhui's victory might already be sealed. Neither the Tiger Fang technique, nor the Void Slash, could contain the pressure Jwabek was exerting on the MC. But if he could outlast his opponent, he knew he could win this fight, though it would cost him his life. He had to win and save the blue twins' life, so he aimed a strike with his sword directly at the boy's chest. The boy dodged, but the slash seemed deep. The twins' face twisted in despair, and the ketchup began pouring from the blade in large quantities. Jwabek was frightened, but the MC was even more so. If he had been a moment slower to dodge, the strike would have hit his heart directly. Jwabek grabbed the blade, leaving the MC desperate and unsure of what to do. The twin pulled the sword closer to himself, closing the distance between them, aiming directly at the MC's head. But the MC realized what he needed to do. He knew how to resolve this situation. He grabbed the blue twin's hand, interlacing his fingers with his, and held it firmly. Jwabek asks if he really dares to engage in a key battle with him. But in the next moment, his golden blood is already starting to seep out of his body, and he shows immense fatigue. The old man steps between the two, separating them with a single strike and sending each flying in opposite directions. The MC is thrown so hard that he bounces on the ground before falling again. He gets up and asks why the old man decided to interfere in the fight, and the old man responds that he had just saved the MC's life by stopping him from using all his innate ki, and that's all he had to say? Since no one won the battle, it won't count. Who would have thought it would turn out this way, right? Wenhui is stunned. The fight doesn't count? The old man asks why the MC didn't use the sword techniques from the manual he gave him, and the MC realizes that this was the trap. The boy replies that he's not as stupid as Action thinks, leaving the old man puzzled. Wenhui says he knows the old man is familiar with the techniques in the manual, and, knowing how to use them, he also knows their weaknesses. The old man then asks if he changed the techniques because of that, and the boy says yes. Action asks if someone taught him, but the boy simply asks if anyone could enter his territory without permission. He says that's probably the MC's limit because he can still see his weaknesses, but the boy intentionally made mistakes to avoid suspicion. Wenhui asks the old man if he understands, leaving him confused. The boy continues, asking if he doesn't think the previous master of these techniques improved them precisely because someone like him knew them? Does he really believe the master wouldn't have enhanced them? This question enrages the old man, who sees that the master long gone from this world. He regains his composure and says that, in any case, the battle won't count because it ended in a draw, but the MC says he would have won without his interference. The blue twins' condition was pitiful. It was obvious, but the old man says no one can know what might have happened, even if the boy was lying on the ground like garbage. Manhwa is furious, feeling it's unfair to him. He only had half a technique. The boy who inherited the old man's techniques already knew the weaknesses of the sword technique the MC was using, and he also consumed elixirs to boost his internal energy. He even received rare gauntlets to wear on his arms. Couldn't the old man see what he had accomplished despite such a disadvantageous situation? He had won a fight designed for him to lose. If he couldn't recognize his victory, he might as well erase himself right there. He wasn't the old man's plaything. The blue twin wouldn't stand a chance against him in a fair fight, and the old man knew it. Without the elixirs or gauntlets, the result would have been different. The old man bursts into loud laughter, confusing the MC. Then he stomps the ground, lifting the boy into the air, grabs him by the face with one arm, and asks why that idiot used that without his permission. He had warned the boy he couldn't handle it yet, but it didn't matter. He asks the boy if he gave him any elixirs, and the boy asks if the pills the old man gave him every day weren't elixirs. The old man laughs, saying that if he had that many elixirs, he would never waste them on someone like him. Action tells the MC he taught martial arts to the twins because they had perfect bodies capable of learning the golden blood technique. The twins' blood flows faster than that of normal humans, allowing them to store more internal energy naturally. The twin then asks what the pills were for, and the old man explains they were to control blood flow so it wouldn't run too fast and poison them. And about the gauntlets, the MC couldn't complain about them while he was using a sword. Even though it was old, it was made of cold steel, a handcrafted sword better than most common swords. The Celestial said he was right, at least this time. And the old man continued, saying that even so, the fight was unfair and orchestrated for him to win. The boys were nothing more than mere chess pieces to him, but the boy tried to trick him and almost won the fight. So the fight wouldn't count, and their agreement was cancelled. The MC then said he was just a disposable pawn, and the old man replied that he would take that disposable pawn as his disciple. Manhwa was shocked to hear this, and Action said it would be a great waste to discard so much potential. There are a few exceptional individuals in martial arts, called geniuses. When these geniuses are taught something, they can learn other things independently through their initial training, and this was a talent the MC had. In any case, because of this, he decided to take the boy as his disciple, and Manhwa said he was honored. He thought it was just something he had learned, but the Southern Celestials said that was truly his talent. Sodam added, asking if he thought anyone else could hear them. He thanked the two swords for their help, but it was still too early to relax. He still had one last matter to settle with Action. He looked at the old man and asked if, even if he became his disciple, he wouldn't be able to learn his special arts. He had said that the technique could only be learned by people with faster blood circulation, like the twins. But the old man said he wouldn't teach him fist techniques but would help him master his sword techniques, which were from his only rival. The protagonist feigned surprise and asked if the skeleton at the waterfall was the former Southern Celestial swordsman, and if that was his sword. The Celestial said she had already told him that, but Sodam explained that he was just acting. It was the first time he had heard this information from Action, so he had to pretend he didn't know it. She would have to get used to it. The old man explained that he was the only one who knew the stellar sword art after the former master passed away, so he would help the MC master it. The MC even thought he didn't need the old man's help since he had the sword's spirit teaching him, but the old man also said he wanted to fix his Dantian, and asked if he would accept. The two swords said it was a good idea, and the MC greeted the old man as his master, thanking him for accepting him as a disciple. The twins approached Action and asked what would happen to them. The old man said he thought they were incompetent, but he couldn't just discard them after they had learned his martial arts techniques, so he decided to accept them as disciples too. The blue twin was moved by this, and grabbed his brother by the head, telling him to repeat the words to greet Action as his master as well. The bald twin repeated the exact words, even including the blue twin's name, and he told the bald one to use his own name instead of repeating everything literally. Apparently, a big head isn't a sign of intelligence. The MC then called the two of them newbies and, with a mocking expression, said he was happy to welcome two newbies at once. It was good to be a veteran. Jwabek protested, saying they were the ones who had learned the old man's techniques. It wasn't fair for the MC to be their senior. The old man began laughing loudly, and shouted, asking if Jongdae was watching this. His predecessor was now his disciple. He kept shouting and laughing, saying he was the victor here. But the MC was more confused. It seemed like he was doing everything to come out as the winner of anything. The Celestial said she wouldn't help him anymore if he became the old man's disciple. Back at Jongdi's waterfall, the old man approached the skeleton of the former master, asking how he was doing, and said that he would finally surpass him after accepting the MC as his disciple. Except for one last thing, he asked the body to speak to him. Who had killed him? Interesting to ask a dead man who his murderer was. I call that schizophrenia. He had received a challenge letter, different from normal letters. The location, time, and a flower were included in the letter. Although he had received many challenge letters before, this particular one made him quite nervous during his journey to the location. She still didn't know who the opponent was, but the man had a golden eye, and even though he didn't appear to be much older than someone in their 20s, the fight ended in just 40 moves. Someone considered a rival to the 8 martial masters of the entire world, the ruler of Yunnan province, the southern celestial swordsman, had lost. That was all the celestial knew about the man who defeated her former master, and ultimately led to his death. Sodam was impressed by this story, defeating someone like him in just 40 moves. The MC finds this a bit strange. Sodam tells Wunhui to watch his words, saying the former master didn't lose because he was weak but because the opponent was strong. The MC responds that wasn't what he meant. He was about to say something but noticed the sadness on the southern celestial's face. So, he decides to say nothing. It was getting late. It was time for everyone to sleep. Do swords sleep too? The MC places the swords on the ground and wishes them good night, and Sodam asks what he's talking about. Did he really think swords could sleep? The MC reflects that he tried to comfort her by asking more about her former master, but the conversation ended up touching a sensitive topic. Judging by the sword's reaction, she might be hiding something, and from what she said, nothing explained why the ruler of Yunnan province was in Guangdong province. They were talking about the former southern celestial swordsman. He was defeated in 40 moves? If the power difference was so great, why did it take 40 moves? And the southern celestial said he was the man who led her master to his death, meaning something else must have been what truly killed him. After losing the duel, he was probably still alive. He likely went to the waterfall to recover, and someone appeared before him. The person who truly killed the southern celestial swordsman. Was it the same man he had faced, coming back to finish the job? Or someone else seeking a fight? There was no way to know. And then there was what the celestial had told the MC about her master's wish. He wanted a successor but wasn't good with people. So if someone stole the martial arts of the southern celestial swordsman and defeated him, that person would be the only one to know the stellar sword art. Whoever it was broke his jaw so he couldn't speak, broke his arms so he couldn't write, and broke his legs so he couldn't flee. There was only one reason to go to such lengths against John Day. That person needed to become the sole user of the art. It was even possible that what he found written wasn't incomplete but intentionally erased. That person wanted to be the only one capable of using innate ki. The protagonist clenches his teeth in rage. Even though he inherited his techniques and sword without being his direct disciple, he was furious. He couldn't even imagine how angry the sword must have been for being unable to help her master while everything happened before her eyes. Even on the day he met her, she avoided talking about it, probably because it was such a traumatic event for her. Until the southern celestial decides to tell him what happened that day, he has to tread carefully and avoid talking about it. It was the least he could do. Sodam and the celestial were talking, and Sodam asks who was responsible for all of this. The celestial replies that she will speak about it later, and thanks her for understanding. Sodam says there's no need to let the atmosphere between them grow uncomfortable, and adds that the celestial could confide in her since they were both swords. Sodam then says not to worry because she'll change the subject whenever the idiot Wunhui tries to talk about the Celestial's former master. But the Celestial says she doesn't think he'll bring it up anymore. He must have realized she didn't want to talk about it after seeing her face. Sodam asks how she knows that. With a confident expression, the Celestial responds that words aren't always necessary to understand each other. It's something about the bond between a master and a sword. Sodam grows jealous and calls the Celestial ridiculous. She accuses her of acting like she knows everything about the MC. Even though she arrived months after her. She says she'll have to make the hierarchy between them clear. The MC was still listening to everything they were saying, and I thought he could only hear them when touching the swords. The old man arrives, and the MC greets him. But the old man punches him on the head, calling him an idiot. He couldn't believe it. They dared to sleep on the day they were accepted as his disciples just because they had fought a little? The blue twin apologized while being hit. The old man put his hand into a large jar, and said it was the first time he had ever accepted disciples. And when he did, the boys decided to do nothing? He scooped some of the liquid inside the jar with a bowl and said they wouldn't sleep until they finished it. Who would take the first cup? The boys were drooling, marveling at the sight of it. Could it be alcohol? Don't drink before you're of age, kids. This isn't a good example. The boys started shouting, wanting to be the first, and the old man laughed, saying it would be one at a time. The MC woke up the next morning yawning, and left the cave. It was snowing even more than the day before. Jwabek approached him and asked why he was awake so early. The MC asked how his wounds were. The boy asked what his eyes were saying. He had been beaten the previous night because the old man had gotten drunk. The MC said he was dumb for laughing at the wrong time. The old man had thrown the twin against the wall for laughing at him being rejected by a woman, but he thought it was a joke. Wunhui then asked why he was talking so casually with him when he was his junior. but the boy said Wonhui owed him his life. He remembered the moment when the blue twin saved him during the fight against Captain O, but he also reminded the twin of the bet they made after the fight was arranged. The loser would become the servant of the winner. The MC then gave Jwabek 3 choices: call him senior, address him as Lord because of the bet, or fight him again. The boy stammered a little but said he preferred to call him senior. The MC said he didn't hear that clearly, and the blue twin knelt, shouting, "Senior!" but still protested, saying he was stronger in terms of internal energy. Sodam called him an idiot. The MC had only matched their energy levels so the twin wouldn't get hurt, but the MC said he knew that. He was just proud. The old man approached the two and called the MC lucky. When we looked back, an action said they needed to go, grabbing the boy by the collar of his shirt. The boy asked what he meant, but the old man didn't answer and just pulled him along, leaving the boy shouting. As the old man flew with him, the boy asked how much longer he would be carried like that. Even though he had already learned body enhancement techniques, the old man said the boy would take too long to reach the Valley of Six Bloods at his speed. The boy was surprised to hear they were returning to the valley. At the main building of the Valley of Six Bloods, the commander spoke to a doctor, saying the pulse reading had taken less time than expected and asking if it was as prescribed, and the doctor confirmed it. The roof of the building exploded behind the doctor. It was Action, asking if the divine doctor was there. He lifted the MC, who was almost vomiting from the overly fast journey, and asked the doctor to heal him. Someone shouted behind the old man to stop. It was his cousin, saying it had been a while since they last saw each other. Her name was Hanbika, the sixth blood star of the cult. She looked at the protagonist and asked the old man who this child she had never seen before was. The boy was about to bow and greet the blood star when the old man placed his foot on his face and told him to stop immediately. How could a disciple of his, standing at his side, kneel? The boy looked to the side and said it was fine, but he needed to see the divine doctor, so he shouted for him. Another man entered the building, calling the old man cousin, saying he was still big and strong, and asking if he would like some tea. The old man said no. The doctor was the noble one here, so he should drink more instead of him. The old man didn't care about such things. The middle-aged man who had arrived was the divine doctor. The MC thought he was quite different from what he had imagined. He was younger. The old man got straight to the point and asked the doctor to treat his disciple, saying the boy had a problem with his Dantian, and in exchange, he would give him his seal. The doctor refused, and the old man didn't understand. Then the doctor explained that he would refuse because he already had several seals from treating many people around the central district. The MC sees it and is impressed. The doctor had multiple seals, including those from prominent figures within the cult, far more distinguished than Action's. His name carried no weight against the seals of the Four Evils or the 8 masters of the central district who had already reached transcendence. The doctor adds that an issue with the energy center isn't a matter of life or death. There are people with higher priority than his pupil. Someone speaks from behind a veil, saying that if he understood, he should return later. The MC wonders if that person is the important patient the doctor mentioned. The old man grabs the boy by the head and says it is a matter of life or death. If the doctor doesn't treat him, he'll have no choice but to eliminate the boy. Would he heal the MC or let the old man destroy him? As a doctor, he wouldn't let someone be buried early, would he? The MC notices the cunning in his words. Since the doctor is the one in charge, he could even heal the boy's broken bones. Should he break his bones then? The MC is horrified. The doctor says it's unfortunate. He'd heard the boy was the old man's first pupil, but if he's going to kill him, he should do it outside the building because he's busy. The old man is left speechless as the door closes. He then throws the MC aside, toward the commander. He's impressed by the doctor's audacity in rejecting him and says that if the person inside is no longer alive, the doctor won't be too busy to care for the MC. But just as he's about to charge in, the 6th star steps in front of him, asking him to leave the place. The old man is impressed by her courage and says it only makes him more curious about who the patient is, but something completely surprises him. The MC notices the atmosphere has changed. The 6th star's neck is vibrating subtly. He can't hear it, but based on the vibration, the two are communicating through it. The old man says they can wait outside, leaving the MC confused. He yells that everyone except the woman should leave, and everyone rushes out. The MC wonders who that person is to make him act like this but obeys. The old man then asks the 6th star if what she said was true, warning her that if she's lying just to avoid danger for herself, she'll face the consequences. The woman responds that he need not worry, there's only truth in her words. The MC isn't feeling well. Perhaps he drank too much the night before, so he places his hand on his stomach. He sits outside the building, waiting. The patient inside must be important for him to act that way. Sodam asks if he has any idea who it could be, but he isn't sure. The cult leader is no longer alive, so he doesn't know. The Celestial comments that Sodam's question was a bit strange. She thinks this is the first time the MC has dealt with this type of situation. but Sodam talks as if he already knows the future. The MC and Sodam explain at the same time that he had already died in the future and returned to the past. Finally, the Southern Celestial understands. What he said earlier about dying and coming back to life wasn't a metaphor, and Sodam adds that he didn't lie, but she didn't believe him at first either. She tells him to shut up and not interrupt her conversation, and he just apologizes and walks away. Sodam asks where he's going, and he says to the warehouse to look for some water. The alcohol from last night is upsetting his stomach. He enters a place, thinking it must be the food storage, and when he looks ahead, someone is inside, and he wonders who it is. A girl is eating so voraciously that she doesn't even notice the protagonist's presence. She's incredibly gluttonous, and just as he thinks that, she notices him. He's embarrassed to see her like that and lets out an awkward laugh. Then he runs outside, excusing himself and leaving the girl blushing with shame. She runs after him, asking him to wait, and whether he's a disciple of one of the 4 supreme venerables. She pleads with him to forget what he saw, saying she's on a diet. He then asks what that dried meat she was eating was. She yells that she was just eating a bit because she couldn't bear her hunger anymore, insisting she doesn't eat like that all the time, but the MC isn't entirely convinced. She calms down and asks him to keep this a secret, and in exchange, she gives him 2 silver coins. The MC thinks she is a very strange girl. She could have simply left. Why did she decide to give him coins? The old man shouts, calling for the MC to return to where he was. He runs off, even as the girl shouts for him to wait. When he arrives where his master is, the old man knocks him down with a punch, saying he should have waited for him in front of the temple. The old man asks what he was doing there, and he says he went to the storage to look for some water. He hears someone calling him and realizes it's the same whispering technique from before. It's the gluttonous girl saying she'll delete him from existence if he mentions her, and he finishes his sentence by saying he couldn't find the water he was looking for. The old man asks if he's an idiot. The storage is right behind him. The 6th star looks at the girl, who seems to be her servant. She says she didn't eat much, and the 6th star approaches, saying that the old man and the MC seem to be quite close. It was a blessing for one of the 4 venerables to have taken someone as a disciple. She casts a strange look at the MC. That sends chills down his spine and makes him feel dizzy. Immediately, the old man places his hand over the MC's eyes and uses the whispering technique to tell him not to look into her eyes, as he wouldn't withstand her deception. The MC realizes that the moment he became dizzy from the woman's ability, his Dantian activated on its own. The old man tells her not to try anything against them. The woman smiles and says she would never do that. How could she do such a thing in front of one of the 4 venerables? Then she excuses herself, and says they will see each other again. The old man just sniffs through his nose. The old man tells the MC they need to find an herb called Clear Summer to treat the boy. And the MC remembers that this was exactly the name of the herb the divine doctor was seeking in his past life. The old man says he will offer a seal granting privileged treatment to anyone who can find the herb first. The MC already knows where it is. The old man says it would be much easier if that woman weren't involved. The MC asks who he is talking about, and the old man uses the whispering technique to tell him to keep it a secret. If he tells anyone, the old man himself will take care of deleting the MC from existence. He asks if the boy remembers someone following the divine doctor, and reveals that person is the granddaughter of the cult's great patriarch. The MC is shocked to learn that the bloodline of the ancient bloody demon lord still exists. He didn't know this in his past life. Much of martial arts history managed to unite all the unorthodox sects and evil martial artists to create the bloody cult. In the past, the orthodox sects formed an alliance to defeat the bloody cult. The Lone Star, supposedly the greatest power of that time, joined the political battle, and all of this happened because of one person, the Blood Demon. After an intense battle, the Bloody Demon was finally defeated, and the Martial Alliance ensured that his lineage completely disappeared. At least, that's what the MC had known until now. He never thought he'd see a descendant of the Bloody Demon so close as he had today. Sodam understands and says that's why the old man accepted the divine doctor's offer, adding that he was the same in his past life with his disciples. The MC thinks this might be a chance to become the savior of someone who could become the next leader of the cult, but would that be enough? If the MC doesn't become stronger, he could end up under the control of someone more powerful, even if the opportunity is excellent. Sodam asks if he will search for the herb. The MC says yes, there's no reason to miss this opportunity. Sodam agrees, saying connections are important, and the Celestial agrees with Sodam. She starts kicking him, asking why he isn't already searching for it. What if someone finds it before him? But he explains that he can't do it just yet. At the moment, the herb is buried, and it took 4 entire days and all the divine doctors to find it in his past life because they didn't know this. When the sun sets and everyone else has left, that will be the time to move in the correct direction where the herb is located. By nightfall, the MC was feeling great. In his past life, he had always envied those who could use Qigong. The Celestial calls for the boy, and he says he already knows. He thought everyone had already left, but someone was following him. The MC asks the Celestial if she can see who it is, and she is surprised. It was the chubby woman they had seen earlier in the warehouse. She was almost as fast as the MC. He's impressed by this. Even though she's overweight, she can keep up with him. Normally, with that body, she shouldn't be able to. He figures he can lose her if he stops for a moment, so he decides to throw snow in her face to block her vision. And while her sight is obstructed, he climbs up a tree. He loses her for now. Even if she finds him later, there will be some distance between them. The Southern Celestial yells for the MC to look up, and when he notices, the woman is above him, her hand emanating a dangerous red aura. She orders him to stay still. Then she descends with her hand extended. The MC uses his sword to block the strike. He yells for her to stop. Why is she attacking him? This woman is strong, much stronger than the MC. She lands on the ground, standing, and says this is strange. She was informed that his Dantian was broken, yet he can still use martial arts. She charges at him again, and the MC dodges like Neo dodging bullets in the Matrix, trying to figure out what's going on. Her movements resemble an eagle soaring through the air, and the martial arts she uses turn the tips of her fingers red. She's a martial artist from the same group as the woman from earlier. The longer this fight drags on, the worse it gets for the MC. He tries his best to defend, but she's incredibly difficult to handle. There's no way the MC can beat her at this moment, so he'll have to resolve this with words. He strikes powerfully with his sword, causing an explosion of dust in front of him. The woman pauses and says the strength behind that strike is impressive. He missed on purpose, and he yells, asking why she's chasing him. She apologizes and says she saw him sneaking off somewhere in the middle of the night, so she decided to follow him. The MC gets irritated and asks why it matters where he was going. She says it matters because he knows where the herb is. The MC is shocked, unable to understand how she knows that he knows. He asks what she's talking about. Why would he be searching for the herb at night if he already knew where it was? She says he doesn't need to be on guard with her and introduces herself as Heian, a pupil of the 6th star and a friend of the person who needs the herb. The MC says he has a hunch where the herb is but can't reach it yet, and the woman asks him to take her with him. She offers to give him all the Divine Doctor's tablets in exchange. The MC crosses his arms and asks about these tablets. Sodam says it's a good deal and wonders why he's hesitating, but he asks her to wait. Considering she's offering something so significant right at the start of negotiations, she doesn't know how to bargain. She has a very impatient personality, judging by the earlier silver coin incident, so it would be more advantageous to play hard to get. The woman then warns him just in case, saying he shouldn't even think about running away because she's faster than he is. The MC decides to make a deal with her, and says he wants another reward to solidify the trust between them. The woman asks what he wants. He says he wants to learn the wing-like movement she used against him in the earlier fight. She asks if he knows how rude it is to ask to learn someone else's martial technique, and he says yes but bluffs, saying he'll leave if she doesn't agree. She agrees to the deal under one condition. The technique can only be used against people he's absolutely sure he wants to send to the grave. Sodam finds her attitude of teaching the technique reluctantly exhausting, and the Celestial thinks it's because friendship is important to her, but the MC says it's not about friendship. After the deal is struck, the two set off to look for the herb. During their conversation, the woman says he's right. Using martial arts with innate ki could lead to his death. She advises him not to use innate ki all the time unless he wants to be erased from life early, but the MC says it's the only way he has. But he asks how she knew that he knew where the herb was. She says, first of all, because of his whereabouts. All 6 members of the Valley of 6 Bloods searched for the herb for 6 hours. She ran into the Supremes several times but didn't see the MC anywhere, and second of all, that made her certain. She sensed it while following him. He seemed to be running like someone with a clear destination. He didn't look around, only straight ahead. She was clever. She asks if his name is Wenhui, and he says she can address him casually since she seems older than him. The girl glares at him, looking like she's ready to hit him, and asks how he could say that about a disciple of a blood star. She wasn't that old. They arrive at a cliff, and the MC says the herb is at the bottom. She changes the subject, asking if he told anyone what he saw earlier, and he jokes that he thought about it since he didn't get the coins. She calls him mean, and he says he had better things to do, so he erased that memory from his mind. She asks if he's serious, and he says yes and promises not to tell anyone, but she wasn't following him just because of that. The girl gets annoyed, saying it wasn't just a question, it was an important matter for her. Finally, they reach the bottom of the cliff, and the MC places his hands on the herb. He shows it to her, saying that this was the herb they needed. She's relieved to see the herb and says they should grab it and leave. The MC notices she seems happy, just as he expected, and as he's placing the herb into her hands, one of the swords shouts for him to jump forward. He's confused, and 2 masked men descend, snatching the flower from the MC's hand. The boy hadn't noticed their presence at all, and despite being stronger than him, the girl hadn't noticed the 2 men either. These guys were truly strong. One of the masked men says they made a good choice following the MC. Now that they have the herb, they order the others to eliminate the 2 of them. The girl starts asking who these men are, but she's kicked and falls. The MC wonders how long he's been followed and draws his sword. The other masked man politely addresses him as a disciple of the 4 Supremes and places his hand on the MC's arm. With a swift movement using his fingers, he strikes the pressure points on the MC's back. The girl screams for the MC, but he's already fallen to the ground. She looks up, and the men are already climbing the cliff quickly. She wouldn't be able to follow them at that pace. She looks back. The MC is lying on the ground, and she shouts that she'll return soon, deciding to pursue the men and retrieve the herb. She runs off, yelling for the men to stop. The MC thinks she managed to avoid the attacks because she's better than him, but she could at least have released his pressure points before leaving. The MC starts moving. His pressure points are being released on their own. The Celestial explains that his innate ki is doing this for him and asks if he's okay. He says yes and thinks the innate ki has many unknown benefits. Sodam is furious with the girl. That stupid pig abandoned someone who was helping her but prioritized the herb instead. Sodam yells at the MC to chase them, but he asks if he really needs to. In fact, this is a good thing for him. That wasn't a fully matured clear summer herb. The small beads that grow inside the herb change as it matures and become 7 green beads when fully grown. The swords then understand and say the herb they stole only had 5 yellow beads. There were still several immature herbs in that location, but they were completely useless. The true clear summer herb discovered in his past life was behind a frozen waterfall. They would have taken that too if they had been ambushed later. The place was very dark because the moonlight didn't reach inside the cave, but Sodam says she can see something there. The MC thanks her for finding the herb he wanted. There were only 2, but they were the real, fully matured herbs. A sacred herb that only blooms on winter nights. The boy's palms were freezing even though he hadn't even touched it yet. He had to be careful removing it to avoid damaging the root. A different sword was right behind the MC. The MC was still distracted, trying to pull the herb from the ground, when Sodam heard something. The broken sword behind him was saying something, but the MC asked her to wait because he was almost done removing the herb. She said he couldn't hear, so she would check what the sword was saying. The sword's words were fragmented, and Sodam couldn't fully understand because its core was broken. But one word came through clearly, and Sodam heard it loud and clear. Run. Sodam yelled for the MC to start running, telling him not to ask or say anything, just to run. But it was already too late. A gigantic snake appeared behind them. It was incredibly fast. He would need to use the celestial sword now. The snake attacked, and the MC managed to leap back to escape the strike, but the herb was probably crushed in the attack. The MC was desperate, asking what it was, but the celestial said she didn't know either. She'd never seen anything like it before. Sodam called it disgusting. The boy couldn't do much against the snake because he couldn't see well in that area. He had managed to grab the herb, so he just needed to get out of there. He lunged out of the waterfall and started running, but the snake saw him trying to escape and made an insane leap. The Celestial warned the MC that the monster was coming. It was too late to flee. The sword suggested he dodge the strike, and use the sword to land a direct hit. What on earth? This snake had arms. Was it a mutant? The MC spun around. He didn't know if this would work against a monster, but he was going to use the move anyway. The boy used the second technique of the stellar sword, the hidden frog slash. And yes, the terrible technique names are back. The monster's body was tough, but it definitely had weak points. The MC landed the strike, and the monster fell to the ground. But it wasn't fully defeated yet. Rising again and staring at the MC, he couldn't figure out what kind of monster it was. But one thing was clear, it wasn't impossible to defeat. The snake stuck out its tongue and slowly advanced toward the boy. Sodam asked if the monster was scared. It seemed more cautious as it approached the MC. The Celestial urged him not to miss this chance, and the MC raised his sword, saying he knew. The monster charged at the MC, but he was determined to take it down, no matter what. The monster's hands were almost reaching the MC, and he was preparing his strike, showing no fear. He was about to unleash his strongest move, the stellar sword technique, Tiger Force Blade. The boy celebrated as the attack proved effective, and the Celestial was impressed as the monster fell. But the MC celebrated too soon. Sodam was shouting that the monster wasn't even that strong when the MC put his hand to his mouth and collapsed to the ground, dropping the sword. He struggled to get up, and Sodam asked if he was okay. He said he felt hot. He had spat blood onto his hand, alarming Sodam, who asked what was happening. He explained that the venom was spreading. He could feel the burning energy of the venom spreading through his ankle. His innate ki was resisting, but the pain wasn't subsiding. The venom was so potent that he felt as if his body was combusting. Even his throat burned as the pain spread. He couldn't think straight due to the heat, but there was a way to cool his body's overheating, using the bright summer herb. That might help since it was a sacred herb with icy properties. He began to eat the herb. Immediately, he felt some relief from the burning inside him. This was like heartburn, but they hadn't invented antacids yet. The coldness traveled down his throat, unbelievably freezing. The cold and heat collided within the protagonist's body. Sodam yelled at him to control the energy inside him quickly. Was he really going to return to life only to die in such a pathetic way? At that moment, the MC snapped back to awareness. He began meditating to control his body's energy. He had been given a second chance after dying. If he couldn't survive a pain like this, then he was no better than in his previous life. The MC managed to stabilize his mind and thank Sodam, saying that because of her help, he would survive. Wenhui looked at his right hand and saw the blue points glowing again. And a voice says that now that he can hear swords, the Merak will open. Fun fact: Merak is the name of a star in the Big Dipper constellation. The MC thinks he has heard this voice before, but he couldn't dwell on it because he was losing focus. Small explosions occur inside the MC's body, causing him significant pain. The two energies were battling each other, turning his body into a kind of battlefield. The Celestial tells him not to stop circulating his energy. He must keep doing so. He shouldn't be swept away or thrown around by the two energies. He shouldn't try to suppress them but instead use the flow of his core to guide them through his body. The MC refocuses, and his body feels extremely strange, with parts frozen and burned at the same time. The Celestial tells him to think of his innate Dantian as a still lake. Even if lightning and thunder strike it, the lake remains calm. No matter how rampant the currents become after losing their flow, if they find their way through the lake, they will become small ripples until they vanish within it. Slowly and steadily, the MC's lake calms again. The two forces have finally settled inside the MC. It was as if he had drunk a very strong liquor, leaving his insides feeling comfortable. Sodam asks if the MC is awake and if the poisonous energy has calmed down. He says yes, and that thanks to her and the Celestial, he regained his balance. Sodam finds it strange that the Celestial helped, and asks if he's sure the energies have calmed. He asks what she means, and she points out that the Celestial was too far away for him to hear her voice, at least 10 meters away. After the MC picks up the sword, the Celestial says it wasn't her, and asks if he's sure the voice he heard was hers. He says yes. Thinking back, he says he heard the Celestial's voice after hearing the voice inside the blue flower. Sodam remembers him mentioning this before and asks about it. He picks up the sword and says this ability becomes stronger whenever the color of the spots on his hand changes. This time, they were white. Sodam and the Celestial find this amazing, and the MC says that if he gets a chance to leave the Valley of Six Bloods, he will look for the immortal scroll again. Returning to the snake, he wonders what kind of horrifying monster it was. The Celestial doubts it's any kind of mystical creature. The MC prepares to run out of the cave. He didn't want to stay near it another minute, or he might vomit, but as he pushes off, his body flies at incredible speed, slamming into the cave walls multiple times. Sodam asks if he's okay and why he threw himself off the cliff. He says it wasn't on purpose. He used just a little strength, but his body flew. The Celestial suggests that the MC use his innate ki to scan his body. Is the boy a walking X-ray now? Will he turn radioactive too? Wenhui nods and begins scanning his body, noticing something. His internal core is now twice as large as it was before. If he were to quantify it, it was as if he had trained his core for 30 years. The Celestial says she was right. His innate core is directly tied to his life force and expands as the MC faces extreme situations. The yang energy from the monster's poison and the cold energy from the sacred herb likely stimulated this growth in the MC's core. Whatever it was, he had gained enough energy to subdue a first-class master. Sodam is impressed by this, and says she just got an idea. She asks if he still has another immortal snow herb. The translator changed the herb's name, and now it's this. Her idea was that since he knows how to make his internal core grow by controlling the poison and the cold from the herb, he could do it again. If he succeeds this time, his innate core will double in size again, and with 60 years of core training, he would become much stronger. The MC abandons Sodam, and she shouts that she was just joking. He couldn't leave her behind because she was a gift from his mother, and apologizes to the MC. The two masked men are still fleeing from the chubby girl, but one of them says he thinks she's starting to slow down. He doesn't see her anymore, and the other says her stamina is low because she's fat. The man looks at the herb and says they were lucky to follow the MC, but he still has a question. How can someone with a destroyed Dantian use Qigong? Another man replies that their only concern is to get the herb and leave the Valley of Six Bloods, but as he turns to the side, his companion had already lost his head to the technique of the chubby woman who had been chasing them. The woman looks at the masked man, who is still alive for now, and politely asks him to return the immortal snow herb because it belongs to her. The masked man compliments her impressive fighting techniques and Qigong, even though she's overweight, saying it's because she's a pupil of the 6th star of the bloody cult. But in hand-to-hand combat, things are different, so he attacks the girl. In the next instant, she's already sliced the man into 5 pieces. Even then, he manages to utter the name of the 6th star who had arrived at the scene. The chubby woman now holds the herb in her hands. She looks at the dead men and asks if they knew who they had ambushed. The 6th star remarks that they were probably there just for the reward and questions why the girl left the district without saying anything. The girl apologizes, but the 6th star simply says she's happy to know the girl is safe. However, the herb she's holding, the girl confirms that it's the immortal snow herb they had stolen, leaving the woman shocked that she managed to find it. Now that they've safely retrieved the herb, they can return to deliver it to the divine doctor. But the girl asks her master to go ahead without her. She has to return to where she came from. Her master is confused. Back to the MC's point of view. He emerges from the pit where the immature herbs were located. He realizes he can now climb great heights without losing his breath. The Celestial explains that the growth of his innate ki is strengthening his entire body. Wenhui senses Miss Heian approaching, and Sodam asks if it's the glutton. The Celestial only notes that his senses have become even sharper. The MC wonders if she's returning after capturing the 2 thieves. If so, it's incredible. Her mental fortitude must be far greater than others. The Celestial says this is a good sign. If he accumulates more internal energy, he'll be able to sense even those who try to hide. The MC feels satisfied. When they meet, he greets the girl, and she, out of breath, asks if he's okay. She regrets not unlocking her pressure points before chasing the thieves. The MC says it's fine. The situation was urgent, and he managed to free himself on his own. The girl seems relieved but looks at his feet. She asks if he's hurt, noticing some injuries. The MC says it's just scratches, and he's fine, then asks if she recovered the herb. She says she managed to retrieve it thanks to her master and first wants to apologize to the MC. As a precaution, she asked her master to take the immortal snow herb to the doctor first. She tells him not to misunderstand. She will still deliver all the tablets to him. But the MC asks if her master will really do that just because she asked. She assures him not to worry, saying her master will definitely do it, but she will hand them over to action. She adds that her master might want something in return for the tablets. The MC is incredulous. Would they really hand over the tablets so easily? Back at the district, the 6th star says, as she mentioned, if the MC helps her with her request, she will hand over the tablets to him. The old man says he's already told her he doesn't want to be involved in this matter. How dare she use the tablets to negotiate with him? The woman retorts that he already knows he has only 2 options, regardless of his desires. She asks him to work with her group or else. A red-haired woman wearing a hat arrives at the district. The old man still isn't thinking about the other option. The woman says that eventually, the old man will have to make a decision. But he says he doesn't care. He won't do what she wants just to heal the inner core of a disciple. She insists that it's important. Action says he just needs to give up on the boy. The woman replies that in that case, she doesn't think she can hand over the tablets to him, but wonders if he's bluffing about this. The boy returns and announces his arrival to his master. He's with the chubby woman. The old man shouts that he's late. He won't be able to fix his energy core forever. The doctor enters the room and tells the 6th star that it's unfortunate. She will need to find another immortal snow herb. The woman asks what he's talking about, and he explains that, first of all, it wasn't a fully matured herb, so it had no healing properties. A fully developed immortal snow herb has 7 green beads inside, while the one she brought only had 5. It was a young herb. The woman is surprised, and the old man starts laughing, saying it's truly unfortunate. It seems she'll have to search for the herb again. But the boy interrupts his master, and says there's no need for that. He had brought a fully matured herb for the divine doctor. The doctor says it's quite the coincidence that 2 people could find these herbs in such a short time, and this one was indeed what he needed. The old man keeps laughing and says it's exactly what he'd expect from his disciple. The chubby girl uses the whispering technique and asks the MC what happened. Why didn't he tell her about this detail regarding the herb? Had he deceived her? The boy wants to say she was the first to break the agreement between them, but he doesn't know how to use the whispering technique to communicate. The boy then steps forward and asks if he can ask Action something. Was the 6th star going to hand over the tablet to him? He replies that she threatened him, saying he couldn't have the tablets unless he did what she asked, and asks what this is about. The woman becomes nervous and asks when she ever threatened him, and he asks why she didn't give him the tablets then. She has no response, and glances at her pupil, who also remains silent. The MC breaks the silence, saying he was right. That matter was settled then. The girl didn't look too pleased, but nothing could be done. A bet was a bet. Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.